Well, this isn't the ocean. That's because you initially hatched from an egg while still inside your mother. Even at this age, work has already started, as you're introduced to the predatory lifestyle by mum feeding you some underdeveloped eggs. Once you hit 5 feet, you are born. Somewhere. We don't really know where because we've never seen it, but we can narrow it down to the whole ocean, likely at one of these prey-rich hotspots. Along with your 7 siblings, you immediately swim away from mum, who may now only see you as prey, which is probably what happened to this guy. I'm sure that's not a scarring image. You're a nepo baby, instantly starting life at the top of the food chain, where you can continue your parents' legacy of eating everyone else so you can grow larger and larger. One present mum did pass on to you is a starter pack of knowledge for you to learn on what to eat and how to kill it. Something that a lot of animals have to gather themselves. Let's see what's next on the list. Many great whites don't survive the first year, so you have to get a move on and focus on pure growth. Your jaw isn't quite strong enough to take on large prey, so you stick to smaller fish and whatever else you can find. Because of your smaller size, you live a sheltered life around shallow coastal waters, but these early years see your fastest growth rate adding on about a foot per year until you reach 3 or 4 years old. As you come to the end of your pup years, you decide to celebrate with a one-off treat. You are now a juvenile great white shark. Let's see what's on the next card. At 8 to 9 feet, you can now take on some slightly larger prey. Still not quite ready for mammals though. Up until now, all of your prey have had no choice but to suffer your wrath, but your next target is your first test of consuming someone who has other options. Something that helps you with this is counter shading, your form of camouflage where your dark back blends in with the sea, your white belly blends in with the sunlight, and the two together break up your outline. This allows you to strategically trick the penguins into thinking that the water is a nice place to be. Having successfully orphaned the chick, you merrily move on to your next target. Oh no. Looks like there's a killer on the loose. You're still an easy target for an adult shark's growth plan, so best keep your eyes peeled. Meanwhile, an innocent stingray flaps its wings, sending a weak electrical pulse through the ocean that you can detect with the 1,500 jelly-filled paws all over your head. This sixth sense gives you the ability to easily yoink unsuspecting prey with pinpoint accuracy. Another strong sense that's been gifted down to you is your sense of smell. Just under your snout are 2 nostril-like holes that can detect a seal colony 2 miles away, but they do have their limits. It is true that you can smell a drop of blood in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, if it's only slightly filled, about the same as most fish. One thing you can easily pick up is the delicious smell of a dead whale carcass. Coincidence that is the next thing on your training. Unfortunately, this opportunity also attracts a lot of other, bigger sharks, and you don't want to tempt fate, especially with a known killer around. You take the safe option of hovering around the area, picking off any chunks that drift away. I guess that counts. I mean, you didn't really eat the whale, but at the top of the food chain, normal rules don't apply to you. After a few more years of keeping the ocean in check, you've grown to around 12 or 13 feet and are ready for your final challenge of juvenile life. Yellowfin tuna can grow up to 8 feet long, so this will be a true test of your strength and ability. As you finish your set, a convenient school swims over your head, and one seems to be struggling behind. You've learned to always take advantage of the weak and helpless, so employ all your stealth skills to get as close as possible, then detach your jaw from your skull to open wide as you burst through the tuna, taking a fat chunk of it with you. That seemed to be easy. Wonder what was wrong with the tuna. Anyway, you did it. You're becoming an unstoppable force in nature. Well, nearly unstoppable. Another murder. They must still be out there. At least you're becoming less of an easy target. You are now an adult great white shark. I know up until now you've been targeting different animals, but you're really an opportunistic feeder, and a good opportunity has arisen for you to get your next meal. People smiling makes you sick, so you close in from behind, carefully avoiding their echolocation, then 0 to 25 and... Who said sharks were afraid of dolphins? That was your first mammal kill, and since your jaw's now strong enough, you can go after some more. Brown fur seals are your next target, and you opportunistically hunt them by deliberately heading to somewhere called Seal Island. Obviously, lots of seals means lots of competitors, and there's a dominance hierarchy in the market that goes along the lines of larger beats smaller, female beats male, and if both those fail, whoever got there first. It's theorized that you may share information about different prey with each other, but given the number of dead sharks you've seen, you're going to give that a miss. Hunting these guys is a bit more complicated, but with a quick read of your gifted natural instincts, you should be sorted. You hover in the depths and look up at your unsuspecting victim who's just trying to provide for their family. You take aim at the target, then with 5 strong swooshes hit your top speed. Just as you're about to make contact, everything goes black, because you roll your eyes back in your head for protection. Next thing you know, you're 10 feet in the air, no ceiling mouth, looking down at something that isn't the ocean. The balance rock in your ear is having a meltdown as you scramble back to the ocean in shame. You're a massive failure. Hey, I know who you can take it out on. That other completely innocent seal over there. 50% success rate. That sounds about right. Not very successful for your teeth, though. Don't worry, that's normal. They're only held in by soft tissue. You have 7 rows of teeth all ready to step up for duty when the front ones fall. As the conveyor belt moves forward, you continually produce new teeth that join at the back row. Of the 300 teeth in your mouth, only around 50 are actively tearing up families. Speaking of that, it's been a few days, so you're hungry again. You slowly approach a new colony. That looks like a good target. Oh, there's another next to them as well. And another one over there. Wait, there's loads of them, everywhere. And they're all coming right towards you. As the seals start mobbing around you, you're as close to terrified as your brain lets you be. So, mildly concerned. You try to swim away, but they follow en masse, taking the occasional nasty jab at you. They're obviously not a fan. It's not your fault, you can't help what you were born into, you're just trying to do your job. And what they don't realise is that you're actually good for them, even though you bring only misery. Without you keeping the populations down, there'd be too many of them and not enough food to go around, so they'd die anyway. At least if you kill them, someone gets the benefit. They don't look convinced. You know lost cause when you see one. I guess you're not as formidable when everyone comes together. After that reality check, you're faced with another surprise. The seals are probably not capable of this. The shark's 14 feet, about the same size as you. Whoever did this has to be one massive shark, meaning it's not even safe to be an adult here. Time for you to migrate elsewhere. You're known to migrate vast distances using your electroreception to navigate Earth's magnetic field. Some of the usual routes look like this, but I'm making a new one up. To avoid the killer, you make sure to swim at different depths, maxing out at over 3,000 feet, relying on the fat and oil stored in your liver for buoyancy and energy. You've arrived. Time to establish yourself. You're fed up with dealing with seals for now, so look at your training for something else. California sea lions. Well, that seems easy enough. Similar setup to the first seals, just without the spectacle. You locate your target, go to 5th gear, and hit them with possibly the most powerful bite in the animal kingdom. At over 1,000 kilos, the impact alone is probably enough, but you don't give them any chance by dragging them down below. Nice. What's next? Sea otters can be up to 5 feet long, so not the hardest kill, but you do have to be really nasty. Right, that's enough training for now. You need to rest for a big trip ahead. A couple problems you have are that you need to keep moving so oxygenated water flows over your gills, and you don't have eyelids, so typical sleep isn't on the cards. To get around this, you find strong current, face it head on, and open wide. This neat trick means you can slow right down to recover without suffering the same fate as the sea lion. At least, we think. How you sleep is really still a mystery, but this is one theory based on some observations. You've planned out your annual holiday to a nearby feeding paradise called the White Shark Cafe, and by nearby I mean over a month's swim along an actual migration route. Here, you take a break from the usual grind you tuck into a wide variety of nutritious deep-sea fish. A few months later, your belly's full and you're sad to be leaving the cafe, but there are exciting days ahead. Your natural instincts tell you to head further north along the California coast. These waters are getting colder, but luckily your family, the mackerel sharks, are part of a very elite group. Most fish are cold-blooded and need to rely on the water temperature to regulate their body temperature, but of the over 33,000 species, you're one of the around 35 that have warm-blooded capabilities. As you swim along, warm blood from your working muscles transfers heat to the cooler blood on its way to your organs, helping you maintain a higher body temperature than the surrounding water. This means you're still as lethal as ever and can generously help manage the population of that elephant seal colony over there. Now, these guys can be quite large, which is why you're here for the pup season. You can take out an adult, but it's a lot easier to take advantage of the ones just getting their start in the world. You could probably just wallop it and swallow it whole, but it's still important to maintain the correct technique to avoid injury and practice for the adults. In this case, you bite their lower body to immobilize, then casually wait it out till they bleed to death. Every day's a holiday when you love your job. You're lingering around to get another bite until you notice something on the rock face in the distance. You head on over, and as soon as you can make out what it is, you lose your appetite. They must be following you. Now that you're massive, everyone wants a piece. There's a few more sharks around here. Is it them? Or them? You're not taking any chances. Ah, well, this guy's only like 8 feet long, so it wouldn't have been them. Whoops. At least the part of your brain responsible for feelings isn't very developed, so you couldn't care less. So, the killer's still out there. Time for another made-up migration route. As you're settling into your new home, you get a nice tasty whiff. Now that you're an adult, you should be safe to go over. You take a deep breath. Well, not really, because you're a shark. I guess maybe you open your mouth a bit wider, then go in for your first bite. Okay, so far so good. No one seems interested. You've never been one for chewing, so continue to go back and forth, ripping off chunks you can swallow whole, until you mistime your bite. Now you're going to get it. Or not. They don't seem to care at all. Everyone seems to be a lot more civil than your experiences have taught you. And it looks like you've even caught someone's eye. Well, time does fly by, and you've already hit maturity at around 26 if you're male or 33 if you're female. But another thing we don't know a lot about is mating, because we've never seen it. Although it is thought that whale carcasses could be a popular meeting point. As a female, you'll typically be a few feet bigger than the males, probably because you need room to store up to 10 pups. You don't have arms. So the only way the male can hold onto you is with their jaw. Luckily, your skin is made up of miniature interlocking teeth, making it very rough and durable. This skin, similar to a golf ball, also helps you to be hydrodynamic, so the male can efficiently get lost when he's done. 12 months down the line, you pass on your wisdom to 7 or 8 new pups, who all immediately leg it from you. Next on your training is sea turtle, so hopefully you'll come across one soon, but right now you spotted an opportunity for a quick snack. The water's a bit murky and you can't quite make out what it is, so using the pores along your body that detect vibrations, along with all your other overpowered sensors, you go in for a taster bite. Whoops, mistaken identity. You're not a fan of human, too much bone. But for some reason, that massive shell doesn't seem to bother you. This one is very straightforward, just raw power to break through the shell. Nice, you've completed your training. Now there's just one more final boss. But first, what's that over there? You're a very curious species, so decide to get closer and pop your head up for a look. Something known as spy hopping. Nothing of interest. As you're swimming back, you suddenly realise that you're not going anywhere. Okay, this can go 2 ways. If they're nice and this is an accident, you go free. If not, you end up as soup. Saved by the plot armor. But it looks like someone wasn't. They've got to be like 19 feet long, looking very battle-scarred, and there appears to be some shark remains spilling out its stomach. That can't be coincidence. This has to be the killer. Must have followed you here. I guess they finally ran out of steam. Right, after that detour, you're now ready for your final challenge. Humpback whale. Juvenile. An adult would be a bit of a push. You decide to swim back towards South Africa until the opportunity arises, then check the instructions. In true final boss fashion, they're double your size, have a ton of health, but don't actually deal that much damage, especially if you avoid their special attack. So you just attack away for half an hour until you eventually win. Nice. Now you can eat till your belly's full. Oh, is that all you can fit? Well, that was a bit pointless then. Anyway, you've finally done it. You've killed everything, ruined lives, all to get to a whopping 20 feet long. You're the most feared predator in the ocean, and no one can stand up to you. You prove you're the undisputed ruler of the seas, and That's not what you expected.
Earlier this month, scientists discovered a large cave system on the moon's Sea of Tranquility, the landing site of Apollo 11. The cave's size and relative sheltered location makes it a front-running candidate for the basis of a future lunar permanent presence. While the cave itself seems mostly flat, the entrance is unfortunately located at the bottom of a deep pit, and it would take some creative solutions to lower astronauts and supplies inside. Due to the moon's lack of atmosphere, temperatures can vary wildly, from an extreme high of 121 degrees Celsius during the day to an extreme low of minus 245 at night. The cave, however, seems to sit consistently at a much milder 17 degrees Celsius, the temperature where you don't need a jumper, but should probably take one anyway. Of course, for humanity to go full circle and become space cavemen, we first need to get back to the moon. Fortunately, NASA is already on the job, and by now they've gotten pretty good at it. On the 15th of July, the newest core section of NASA's Space Launch System, SLS for short, rolled out of the assembly facility in New Orleans and began its trip by boat to the Kennedy Space Center in southern Florida. When it arrives, it will be thoroughly inspected and eventually become the base of the next SLS.
Update 44 just dropped and you've got and Warp Madness. Now you start your Warp Madness quest and you can still do and repeat this. You only have to do this 3 times, so it's really, really fast and probably the easiest way to do it. First of all, you place down a village and you go for Monkey Town. So all your towers make more money. Now you place down a glue gunner right here and you go for Bloons and glue splatter. Now this guy can defeat the first 2 rounds easy and you don't have to do anything. So make sure to turn off auto start and just wait until you reach round 3. After the first 2 rounds, place down the druid and upgrade your druid to hard thorns and also to spirit of the forest. Now make sure both of your towers are in range of jungle drums and also in range of camo detection. So place the second village in range of the first one, go for bigger radius, and go for radar scanner. And upgrade your first village to jungle drums. Now double and go for radar scanner. And upgrade your first village to jungle drums. Now double check if both of your towers have camo and jungle drums, and now you can continue. Alright, the last step is to place down Darting Gunner right here, lock him at the start of the map, and upgrade him to focusing fire, laser shock, and to MAD. And that's basically it. You don't have to use any abilities in round 5, you can just wait until you defeat the round. Now after doing this, you press next, press play again. Now you just have to repeat this 2 more times and then you can play Humor Monkey. The last step is to just go back to the menu. Press the present and collect Humor Monkey.
Final combo with the final
You can still do and repeat this. You only have to do this 3 times, so it's really, really fast and probably the easiest way to do it. First of all, you place down a village and you go for Monkey Town, so all your towers make more money. Now you place down a Blue Gunner right here and you go for Bloon Solver and Glue Splatter. Now this guy can defeat the first 2 rounds easy and you don't have to do anything. So make sure to turn off auto start and just wait until you reach round 3. After the first 2 rounds, place down a Druid and upgrade your Druid to Hard Thorns and also to Spirit of the Forest. Now make sure both of your towers are in range of jungle drums and also in range of camo detection. So place
Sometimes there are players who come into the Overwatch scene without any hype, shock everyone with great performances. Then we have others who have some sort of redemption and be a much better player than anyone anticipated after a poor showing or no showing at all. Today we're going to look at a few players who fell into this category of unexpectedly shocking viewers. Checkmate joined Overwatch League back in 2021 as a DPS player for Florida Mayhem. People weren't really sure if he was ever going to play, considering how he's competing with Yaki for playtime, who was the main flex DPS on this team. Coming off of 2020, he was one of the best Tracer players and overall a great flex DPS, so Checkmate was probably going to come in specifically for Echo Tracer or something along those lines. But instead of coming in to play the role he was signed for like a normal person, he played tank, where the Checkmate Ryan was, funny. Of course, it made people turn their heads since it was disgusting, awful gameplay. All he did was
place the second village in range of the first one, go for bigger radius, and go for radar scanner, and upgrade your first village to jungle drums. Now double check if both of your towers have camo and jungle drums, and now you can continue. Alright, the last step is to place down Dartling Gunner right here, lock him at the start of the map, and upgrade him to focusing fire, laser shock, and to MAD, and that's basically it.
was just pin in and either hope he kills someone or his team wins the fight before they all die. Since he has 0 tank experience at this level, what else can you really expect from him? Checkmate's not going to win against anyone in a mirror, and especially the fact that his first tank scuffle was against Fearless, so the odds were immediately stacked against him. But to give Florida some credit, this match actually went the distance. Not entirely sure how that happened, but it did. Apparently the Checkmate suicide bomber playstyle nonsense was enough to throw Dallas off guard. Obviously this was not going to last for a long period because the play was just so bad. After team saw one match of it, they just knew what to expect. I guess all we can do is thank OG for this meme match since he decided to take a break halfway through the 2021 season. Other than this random stint, we started this season knowing nothing about Checkmate and ended the season still knowing nothing about Checkmate. There were rumblings of him supposedly being a good player, at least according to their GM, Albert. You can make of that what you will. I don't think the GM of a team will say his players are shit or talk down about them. We just didn't get to see this said talent for ourselves. When it came to this Florida team overall though, ending that season, them placing bottom 3 in North America is kind of sad considering the player quality, and their previous season where Mayhem placed top 4 with the same core roster is quite the drastic shift. Maybe fate just added that much to the team in 2020. I don't know. This whole roster was dropped of course, starting a rebuild for 2022, and it was kind of shocking to see Checkmate return. If anything, you'd expect Yaki since he was a proven talent at this point in time, but Gunba saw what we all didn't in Checkmate apparently. 2022 was the foundation to get eyes on Checkmate. We were able to see how this whole time he was clearly a talented player, showcasing some highlights, mechanically good enough to compete with the better players while also being very flexible. Of course, he was not a proper Kevster type running lobbies down, just someone who could fit into a higher end roster perfectly, seeming to play anything you could ask of him at a high enough level to let a multitude of comps work, which inevitably became the strength of Florida Mayhem in the following season, where he would become a bigger part to that roster than most give him credit for. Fast forwarding to the main event year for Checkmate in 2023, we all know how this roster performed, that being as expected. Someone got MVP due to his flexibility as tank, and everyone else gets praised endlessly. Chorong being one of the best main supports in the world, Merit is a top tier hitscan player, but Checkmate always seems to go without this praise. People just say, yeah, he's a good player, and then stop talking about him, while overlooking how important Checkmate was to the overall success of this team. I'm just gonna add this in now, but I forgot to include RuPaul for that part, so oops. He's a good player too. Obviously, for Florida Mayhem, someone deserves the primary flexibility praise. Being able to counter swap on the fly as tank is much more difficult, since you quite literally dictate the pace of the game for your team, while also being able to create plentiful amounts of strategies due to your ability to play any tank at a high level. But you also need a very flexible player to be alongside that said tank, which Checkmate falls into that category perfectly. I don't think there is a single hero he played throughout the season where you could say Checkmate just shouldn't be playing that. You want him on whatever other hero. Anything that was asked of him, he could play it to a really high level, and honestly could have gotten Roll Star in 2023. I know I sure as shit never expected Checkmate to be this kind of player, and it reminds me a lot of Fleta. They are both very similar in the fact they're good at everything, but not the best at anything, and have that capability to pop off, and always had this praise of being very intelligent at the game. And also, both of them play tank, and they both sucked at it, so there's that too. Whenever this Mayhem team went for a rush style, Checkmate pulled out Mei, and he looked really good at that. If they wanted to play dive, his Tracer and Genji were both fantastic and able to compete with the best, and this same sentiment can stem to anything he needed to play throughout this entire season. Unexpectedly, he ended up being a DPS version of someone. Checkmate is not the best at anything, but good enough at everything. He fit alongside the most flexible tank seamlessly, allowing Florida to make it even easier to play their game. Now, this isn't to say Checkmate is the best player in the world. There are DPS players who are just better mechanically. Keysong, Stalker, Kevster, or Proper, just to name a few, but still adds a higher value than a lot of other players. I don't think a soul on this planet ever thought that Checkmate would become an Overwatch League champion. He was just a funny rectangle man who played for OG during lunchtime or whatever he was doing, benched by Yaki, when in reality, all along, they had this amazing diamond in the rough player and just never started him. As of me making this, Checkmate actually just joined Fnatic, which is a revamped Yeti roster in Korea for Overwatch Champion Series, Donghawk and Attack for tanks. For DPS, there's Viper, Knife, and Checkmate. Kind of strange for them to sign another flex DPS. I'm assuming Knife will continue to be the hitscan player while Checkmate takes over the spot for Viper as a primary flex DPS, while Viper sits on the bench and probably only comes in for Echo Tracer. Then their backline is Izzyaki and Lijagon, known quantity, great to see them back again. Izyaki's probably the only person who can tame the Fijagon beast, so I'm expecting great things. Hopefully Checkmate performs well on this roster since he showed a lot of promise to be explosive. I think that will be great alongside Knife, plus he has tons of flexibility that he showed on Florida. Shocking a lot of people, just an amazing player and a fantastic addition to Fnatic. Our next player could be surprising to some, depending on which side of the fence you were on, especially considering how Stalker is viewed now. But going into 2023 Atlanta Reign, I wasn't really sure what to think. He of course played on Seoul Dynasty in 2022, actually being hyped up apparently. I never really heard anything about this. 2022
Update 44 just dropped.
had so many players that everyone had their focus on, like Proper, Finn, American Tornado players, even Kellen for a little bit until we saw what happened to that amazing NYXL team. When ones like Alpha Yi and of course Stalker were put on the back burner due to NA being a much stronger region this time around, most didn't really pay much attention to the players in the East. Stalker had bits of playtime on Sojourn and other little pieces of Tracer during midseason, which did look quite good, but nothing really to gauge anything from. You need a lot more playtime to figure out the ceiling of the player. Summer Showdown was the only time Stalker was perma-starting playing Genji. It was actually fantastic, looking to be one of the best Genjis around. His only competition was Who Are You, and obviously no matter what Stalker does, he can't win against that, but the only reason he was even playing in the first place is because Prophet was on Brig for that stage. Otherwise, I'm sure Prophet would have been on Genji there, where he still has no chance against Who Are You. Looking back, it makes sense to why people kind of forgot or just didn't know Stalker was supposed to be Jesus Christ 2 at the game, being benched practically all season long, and obviously people were more focused on Proper as a rookie and North American teams in general. Unfortunately, Stalker's talent just slipped under the radar, regardless if he had any hype behind him or not. He never really got to play very much outside of Sojourn or Genji. What can anyone really say about him after the season? So when Stalker joined Atlanta Reign alongside Lip in 2023, I was more cautiously optimistic than anything. People were going crazy, but Lip joining any team is going to be a big move in the offseason. Naturally, whoever surrounds him will be praised as well. Then after seeing Chio and Fielder join, the hype accelerated even more. I get he was hyped up going into 2022, a supposed prodigy player. We just didn't see anything on Soul that was giving off how he will dominate his role. I've fallen into the hype for players previously, not fallen for that shit again. It needs to be seen before you can make an opinion. Remember how the American Tornado roster was the greatest team ever and would destroy Overwatch League once the squad gets together? What happened to that? Nothing but disappointment. But when we actually got to see Stalker play during the opening Sombra Tracer meta Atlanta Reign for So Hard, he was pretty good. Just little stuff like looking to be the best Tracer in the world, that's all. The Lip Stalker Sombra Tracer play was disgusting, very akin to Lip Fleta on Shanghai during peak Fleta time, but probably better. Stalker was so dominant on Tracer, getting noticeably more value than everyone else. The best Tracers you could ask for were in North America as well. Alpha Yi trying his best to carry that shit team. You had Proper, Kevster, Decay, Sugar Free, like actual insane Tracer players. Stalker would just run them down in 1v1s, getting the most crucial sticks or kills, even just randomly killing the backline by himself. Stuff like this is why I hate how there was was no public replay viewer. It would be great to actually watch all these POVs even now. Going back and looking at these matches would be great, seeing how he played in a lot of these different situations, but sadly, we don't live in that world. Some people actually said Stalker was the Atlanta Reign MVP instead of Lip, which is reasonable to a degree. With what Stalker was doing, it's hard to argue with sometimes. Tracer as a hero is wildly competitive at this level. Doing what he was doing shouldn't have been happening. Regardless if someone was excited for him in 2023 or not, maybe they knew about his tales on Gen G having the possibility to start the Overwatch equivalent of the Rapture on Tracer. Whatever the hype levels may have been, I don't think a single person was going into 2023 assuming Stalker would be the best Tracer player in the world. And even throughout Overwatch history, his Tracer from 2023 can be up there with some of the most dominant Tracer performances of all time. He exceeded all hype anyone could have ever given him. The unfathomable level of impact just didn't stop. Every match, every day, Stalker was at the top of his game, and it makes sense to why he's a part of the elite gang of Team Falcons now. Most recently, when he pulled out Venture during the Major 1 finals, Stalker looked really good. He was one of the best at that tournament. Of course, he's basically the only person who played it, so it's easy to win when you're the only one, but he got a lot of value on the hero, and seeing Venture played at the professional level was nice. Team Falcons did a good job playing around it, and Stalker overall is just gross. I'm glad he truly proved himself on Atlanta Reign to be one of the best players in the world, and I'm sure he will be for years to come, assuming Champion Series will still be around. Our next player is probably the most shocking in recent memory, at least to me personally, since Hadi and his squad actually let me and plenty others down quite a bit during 2021. People were expecting a lot from the roster initially, most coming from British Hurricane, a team that was exceptional in EU contenders, just endlessly winning. So when 2021 Overwatch League began, no one had any idea how bad this team would be. Of course, it's important to mention how there's some sort of an excuse for them to be abhorrent. The Europe COVID lockdowns were in effect. No one could be in a facility together, and the only other team who was in a similar internal experience was the Paris Eternal, who was much better than London, of course, delivering a few upsets during the season. Any matches either team played was on a higher ping unless it was against each other, which is obviously not ideal. Situations like this can cause problems with certain players since everyone deals with their surroundings differently. Some people can still persevere in a bad environment, others just can't. An even more recent example would be Heesong and Junbin from 2023 Shock. They are currently looking to be the best in their respective roles, but on Shock, they were not very good. Some sort of positive environment is important for having a strong mental, building camaraderie between teammates, and just makes the whole experience more bearable. I'm guessing London is a group of guys that's reliant on having that strong bond between players and thriving in a positive landscape, and this 2021 season is the complete opposite of positive. There's no sense in ripping apart London Spitfire 2021. People being anticipated to see London Spitfire versus Vancouver Titans is all I need to say. Expected to be Toilet Bowl 2. To be as objective as possible with Hadi, individually, he just wasn't very good. Looking very lost, playing a multitude of heroes like Ball, Ryan, Winston, not looking good at any of them, frankly. Hadi got dropped after the season, which was expected. Instead of the classic, the talent is there, it was, is there talent here? He was just viewed as a pretty bad main tank. He didn't look like he belonged in Overwatch League after the season. So when 2022 came around, and then we saw Hadi get signed back to the London Spitfire shortly into the offseason, it created a lot of confusion because, you know, he wasn't good at all during 2021. It was just kind of weird, but maybe Chris saw his talent and wanted to give him another chance, or the Chris anti-Korean arc started and this was his only option of a tank to form his rebellion. This season, Hadi was expected to be dog shit. Obviously, you can't blame anyone for thinking that. London went right down to the bottom of power rankings, but shockingly, he came out the gate swinging, quite literally, not beating any top-tier teams like San Francisco Shock or Gladiators, but they were actually winning matches, most notably playing their Rhine comps, which ended up giving them a ton of fans who adored London Spitfire a lot. Hadi Rhine was looking to be the best around. A started from the bottom, now we're here, as some kid diddlers would say. When other teams mirrored the London style, it didn't work out for them, and Hadi was always individually better. The London teamwork was impeccable with how they executed team fights, and it's genuinely interesting viewing it. Similar to when Dallas Fuel played the Hivemind comps, everyone seemed to be on the same wavelength with how they positioned themselves and executed everything. A funny thing I noticed while looking back is when London started to beat the better teams, it made people really angry for some reason, saying London cheese comps were blasphemy, they don't deserve to win against these other teams. But when Dallas Fuel did the same thing in 2021, the sentiment was a lot different. It was, wow, this is so amazingly executed. It's great to see them dominating these teams. Like, what kind of double standard shit is that? Is the European hatred that extensive? Regardless, no one expected Hadi to even be good, let alone this team overall, where 2021's arguably worst main tank was the focal point of a team's success. Getting a few upsets throughout the season, always being the underdog team propelled them to play with a lot of confidence, since you have that what do we have to lose mentality. Spitfire having its individual style made them an interesting opponent for teams to go against as well. They were the only teams who played this way, and you could see their opposition struggling to deal with it at times. Those people are put in an uncomfortable position. Like, would you want to try to scrim London and waste the scrim block to learn a style only one team plays, or try and adapt mid-series to their bullshit? It wasn't just Ryan we got to see from Hadi. He played Junker Queen, Winston, even bringing out Ball from time to time, where seeing him as a functional tank and performing well enough on other heroes was really good for him. Redemptions like this are not common, and it's quite inspiring to see the drive he had to persevere through his lows, experiencing what is quite literally the lowest of low anyone could have in their career. Putting it into perspective, London won 12 maps during 2021. That team was atrocious. And yes, of course, I know this is a whole different team aside from Sparker and Hadi, but Hadi specifically in 2021 seemed to struggle quite a bit and suffered all of those losses. That can either break you, where a good example of that is Effect on 2018 Dallas Fuel, trying so hard to win on a team that's actually dog shit, he burned himself out completely from the game. Or it can give you an unbreakable mental, where you experience the bottom and you're able to handle whatever situations are thrown at you. And clearly that's the category Hadi fell into. I'm sure his 2021 season helped him quite a bit mentally when London was struggling, because it's not his first time losing a bunch. He also ended up becoming a very positive member for the community. Most people like watching him play, aside from the ones who genuinely hated the Rhine cheese comps as they were coined. The positivity radiating around him probably elevated his performances to some degree, while also being able to play in a team house with his mates obviously helps too. 2023 for Hadi and London was almost the same, aside from London being shit at the Winston meta during the beginning. Not entirely sure what happened there, but they turned their season around later on, and it was one of the most impressive turnarounds of all time actually. They went from being a bottom team to a team that made playoffs, which is really impressive. Overall, Hadi is a very surprising tale. I never expected him to even come back to Overwatch League, let alone make playoffs twice. Those are a few players that were shocking to me, maybe not for you. If there's ones that shocked you a lot more, make sure to leave them in the comment section below. I'm curious to hear all the other ones that I probably forgot about and didn't mention here at all. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and also check out my video on another team from 2021 that is not the London Spitfire, but it is the worst team. There has been a lot of teams throughout the history of Overwatch, fabled classics like Runaway, 2021 Shanghai Dragons, 2019 and 2020 San Francisco Shock, 2021 O2 Blast, but to appreciate something good, you must look at what is truly bad. Today, we are going to look at the worst Overwatch 1 roster ever assembled. No, it is not the Shanghai Dragons of 2018, that team was horrendous, but as we go along, you should understand why our topic of today is worse. The 2021 Valiant was a strange time. Initially, the roster who played throughout the year was not supposed to be the roster. A completely different group of people were signed. We got to see a little bit of the first roster. Valiant held a tournament before 2021 Overwatch League even began. The Valiant Winter Ball, where the Valiant actually came third in. Bronze place in their own tournament is not bad. People did have higher expectations especially coming off of their last season where 2020 Valiant was quite good. Dreamer was kept on the roster as main tank, putting Adam alongside him, who was a good off-tank player from Australia. Shax and Kai with the addition of agilities was a solid DPS lineup. Then Lastro and Rain for support. Building upon what you had previously is going to lead to something positive surely. Until the organization was sold to Satanists who didn't want a part of this league anymore, being our first organization in Overwatch League to start showing they wanted out. Players and coaches were dropped shortly before the season started. Valiant was no longer playing in North America, putting out a statement saying they will be competing in APAC stationed in China. It was very sad because all the players signed just got screwed, being locked into contracts ready to play, then become jobless overnight. Apparently all the players just found out they didn't have a job anymore through Twitter, so how nice is that? True professionalism. At least Kai went to Atlanta Reign and Shax went to London Spitfire, but everyone else was completely boned. Poor Adam mainly. It happened to the guy twice in a row, once here with the 2021 Valiant and in 2022 on Florida Mayhem. He gets signed and then booted off the team with 0 playtime. Obviously after the ownership sale, this roster needed to be sold because getting visas for all these players to compete in China was impossible. This whole situation was met with massive amounts of backlash from the community, and rightfully so. It's a really shitty thing to do. This in turn forced LGE, who were the new owners of Valiant, to sign a new group of players. We were going to see the Chinese Power Rangers battle it out in APAC. They assembled Crystal, Milanron, Shochung, Silver 3, Nevermore, Wuya, and Hybe, ready to eat the entire league alive. We all immediately knew nobody stood a chance against these guys. Like, how could they? Valiant now had Nevermore, who retired in 2018 and didn't play at all until he was signed here to the Valiant. A 3-year break coming back to decimate. Crystal was here, who lied about having problems and stopped playing for the push during his tenure on the Hangzhou Spark, which I believe he got fined for. And then we got Hybe, who was an off-tank player that was signed for main support. There's nothing else to say about that. As a viewer, we all knew pure destruction was coming. I remember waiting on the edge of my seat for Valiant to start their path of chaos, questioning to myself, what is going to happen to this squad? As our season opened, May Melee qualifiers were beginning now. Valiant went up against Chengdu Hunters as their first match, where they actually put up a decent fight, taking a map off of what we now know as a good team. Chengdu was kind of trolling the Valiant during the match, and as we'll get to, it's quite apparent to why people trolled them. After this one map victory, the series was lost, but this squadron, led by Silver 3, would come in day after day and lose, and lose, and lose, over and over and over again. It was mind-boggling to how awful this team actually was, essentially being entertainment thieves. And believe me, we've had teams in the past who were raw fun police. Washington Justice always got called that in 2019 and 2020 because of how horrible they were. Boston Uprising in 2020 as well. But with those teams, there was a chance of punch-up. Like maybe those players could come in and do something, muster up a win against one of the other bottom teams, which they would do. It wasn't very often, but it would still happen. In 2021, Guangzhou Charge was the other really bad APAC team. Like, this team sucked, even though Krong was on it, who had a good season previously. Eileen was a fantastic player. Choice-1 on his rookie year also did very well for himself. I'm not really sure what happened with this team. They just weren't very good. Even they were eating the Valiant alive. The skill disparity between the bottom team and the team above it was almost unheard of until the Valiant came around. They were in a tier of their own and not in a good way. I'm gonna try to be positive about the Valiant for a second and say some nice things about it. Crystal and Shochung were alright, but Milanron was actually like good. As we talked about before with Viper previously, looking good on a team that's rat shit is not easy, but if you look good on this team right here, the 2021 Valiant, you need to be one of the greatest players this world has ever seen. The few fights Valiant would win was typically on the back of Milanron on Tracer or maybe Echo, being mechanically great and doing his best to win fights, showcasing he actually had a future. The guy would keep up with the better APAC flex DPS players at times, and it was quite impressive seeing what he would pull off. Shochung on Zarya seemed to be playing Overwatch 2 a year early, since he was basically solo tanking while Silver 3 rolled around or did other stupid things in the backline doing absolutely nothing every match. I don't think I've ever seen a main tank feed this much once ever. If someone accused Silver 3 of win trading, you might not be wrong about that. Maybe it was a protest against Valiant, I don't know. Occasionally, Shochung pulled out Sigma, having a few good plays here and there. Again, this is all relative to the Valiant. No one is saying Shochung is void on Sigma. I would say he was doing pretty well for himself, especially when every match is essentially 2v6. You can't really expect much. Maybe when we reach Overwatch 5, Shochung and Milanron can come back and show the world who's boss in 2v2. The last player who had any semblance of life was Crystal on Hitscan, who played in Overwatch League for Hangzhou Spark before. On the Valiant, Crystal wasn't terrible individually, and even before he was never a bad player. When he pulled out the Ash or Cassidy, there was some good moments. He wasn't putting fits on the chopping block or anything, but he was getting kills, and for the Valiant, if they could get teamfight wins on a map, that's a victory in my books. Needless to say, nothing was going right for the squadron. Every match was the exact same thing. Lose, 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 3-0 after 3-0. But that doesn't mean it was all downhill, because these guys gave us the funniest moment this league has ever seen. Now, when it comes to anything sad in Overwatch League, Philadelphia Fusion is always involved. As we said earlier, Valiant took a single map off of Chengdu and did not win another map for the rest of May Melee, and this was also true about June Joust until one map happened. Philly was also not having a good June Joust, struggling to adapt with the new hero pools, and the fact teams only have 4 matches per stage to reach said knockouts, teams didn't have too much time to sort things out. Philly was 1 and 2, not really taking maps, losing more than they should, you know, the typical Philly stuff. But for them to make June Joust knockouts, all they had to do was 3-0 the Valiant. The easiest possible opponent anyone could have. Vancouver Titans and London Spitfire, who were both winless at this point, could beat the snot out of the Valiant. So it was to our surprise when these guys actually full-held Philly on Nimbani, then proceeded to cap the point and win the map. Valiant was also playing on stage in front of human beings, which makes this even more sad. This wasn't a full-on LAN because it took place in China, where only the Chinese teams were able to play each other on LAN. Anyone from Korea would be playing from their facility, so anybody having a match against a Korean team, the match would be like a 50% LAN in front of a crowd. It was a strange setup, but what other choice did they have? At least those people got to see a live event. All I can say is 2 things. 1, I couldn't imagine how embarrassing it was to play on stage when you're a laughingstock team such as this. 2, Philly lost a single map to the Valiant, which is the only other map Valiant won throughout the entire year, bringing their total map victories up to 2. Philly losing that single map to the worst team made them be eliminated from June Joust knockouts because it brought Philly perfectly in line with NYXL, who shared the same record and map differential, but Philly lost the head-to-head against NYXL, so they were below the cutoff for June Joust knockouts. So even if they won that match, it didn't matter, they were still eliminated. There was a comment saying something like, even if Philly wins, they still lose, which fits wonderfully. Fusion obviously won the series, they just lost that Nimbani, in turn making their win not matter at all. The stage was over for them. Depending on which side you were on, the Valiant did give us some entertainment. Ruining Philly's tournament in this manner is the reason people say the franchise is cursed. You can't even make this up, it really happened. Having your tournament ruined by the worst team ever is just perfect. When it comes to the Valiant, you can rip these guys apart endlessly. There's no sense in really doing that, obviously. How much can you really say they're bad or they suck? The results speak for themselves here. Winning 2 maps over the span of 7 to 8 months is horrific. So this begs the question, how is this team worse than the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons? Well, initially, I just looked at the map wins, taking the first 16 matches Shanghai played, to try and make it fair to the Valiant since 2021 teams only played 16 matches throughout the season, and see who won more maps. In 2018, throughout Shanghai's first 16 matches, they won 8 maps to Valiant's 2. So you could just go off of that and be done with it, but I feel the other reason Valiant deserves to have the worst team award is because of how much the player quality increases year by year. In 2018, the league had some players that straight up didn't deserve to be there. We had 12-man rosters of nonsense. There's so many people no one even remembers from Season 1. It was a disaster. It's sort of expected, though. Everyone was still new with the whole Overwatch League thing. Bad seeds will make their way in somehow. In 2019 and 2020, we slowly started to see players who didn't belong get fizzled out. 2021 was the first year where a majority of players who were worthless essentially got removed. Obviously, you can't do that 100%. Look at 2021 Vancouver and some members of 2021 London Spitfire, but on average, the quality a viewer can expect is much higher per player with each season that passes. So having a team that can barely win a map in 2021 is pathetic. You can have a similar argument about 2022 or 2023 Vegas Eternal with how high the quality was getting. A team like that was just atrocious. Some of those players were so bad, minds cannot comprehend it. But that god-awful team is a topic for another day. It really depends on perspective to what gauges a team to be completely worthless to you. Most will take the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons as the worst, which makes sense, but the probability of anything like that happening is so low, I feel it falls under the anything that can go wrong will go wrong category. Fearless, Geggery, Dia, and even Undead were not horrible. They were all solid players, just no wins could be had since the rituals were completed and nothing could stop that curse. And honestly, comparing 2018 Shanghai Dragons and 2021 Valiant is like comparing a piece of shit to a piece of shit with flies on it. It doesn't really matter because they both suck. With the Valiant, I'm sure there's a lot of intangibles that went into that whole situation. Plenty of things we don't even know about nor have even been brought to the public. Hell, with the 2022 Valiant, we know some of those players weren't even getting paid. I'm sure 2021 Valiant was being paid with belly button lint and scraped up change from the garbage, with the players eating cans of Spam with butter melted on top, inside of a crammed up room inside their team house, if they even had one, which they probably didn't. This most likely killed the motivation of each and every player. Interestingly enough, some of them had decent performances throughout contenders. Being fair to these guys, even Silver 3 was getting a few silver medals in contenders. Shoucheng won Contenders China Season 2 right before joining Valiant. So these were clearly capable players. In the league, things just didn't go their way. I'm also more than positive teams wouldn't scrim the Valiant due to how bad their performances were. Why would anyone want to waste their time scrimming a team that is horrendous and can barely win a map? It's completely pointless, there would be nothing to take away from it, and you wouldn't benefit at all. It's just unfortunate this whole situation happened, and especially to the original roster who all lost their jobs overnight. Not only that, but stuff like this hurts the league and competitive scene as well. Watching a team that sucks lose on repeat is not a good viewing experience. Teams like Vesta Crew in Champion Series, for example, them getting pounded over and over and over again is just not fun to watch. Viewers want to see competitive matches, but you just can't have them when a team like 2021 Valiant exists. I would say this is the worst team ever assembled in Overwatch 1. Possibly there were some worse ones in contenders, but with the expectations and how gated off Overwatch League was, seeing a team perform this badly sort of beats the rest out in my opinion. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the 2021 LA Valiant. Do you feel like this is the worst team ever assembled, or is there a worse one? Make sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out the last video. Today, we're going to talk about a DPS duo that has been underrated throughout the entirety of Overwatch Champion Series, and going into it, people should have been paying a lot more attention to these two. As it goes with most players, we need to talk about the Overwatch League first, leading up to Champion Series. Most want to forget the Shanghai Dragons of 2023, their worst season since 2018. Similar to Shock, both teams just weren't good in Overwatch League's final year. 2023 was the year of disappointment when it comes to overhyped players and rosters. We also had a lot of budget cuts, especially with Shanghai Dragons, owned by NetEase, being the company who refused the relicensing of Blizzard games in China, so obviously these people aren't going to want to put more money into Overwatch. They signed a more than questionable roster, Fleta on tank, DM, Bebe, and Gangnam Jin as supports. Obviously going into the season, Iris replaced DM on support. I just thought I would mention him. In DPS of Hisu and Viper, the man of the hour. No one knew who this guy was, like seriously, being on O2 Blast with like 30,000 other DPS players, barely ever getting playtime. A simple Genji one trick, that's the only name he had. Judging by the rest of this roster, not a soul was expecting anything worth a damn from Viper. Gangnam Jin was obviously going to be playing main support, even though his previous season on NYXL was god-awful. Getting the main support player from the 19th seed of 2022 was a fantastic idea if you ask me, especially when it was the worst performing player too. Very smart. Fleta was going to be playing a lot of Winston, it's just Shanghai had a lot of disaster written all over it, and as expected, the team rolled out only getting 5 wins throughout the entire year. I guess it's better than Vegas Eternal or Valiant, but what does that prove? Shanghai had a better season than 2 of the worst teams in the league? How inspiring. The anticipated happened, Gangnam Jin main support was not the move, Fleta was horrendous on Winston, but Viper was an absolute animal. As a person who was interested in the automobile wreck known as 2023 Shanghai Dragons, I actually watched all their matches throughout the year, witnessing Viper pull a 2021 Washington Decay, doing his best to carry his shit team. Viper on Tracer was the only reason Shanghai ever looks competitive, unless Hisu decided to show up that day, which wasn't very often. Viper was coined as Sticky Fingers because his pulse bomb stick rate was just unbelievable. He was regularly finishing an entire series with a 50, 60, sometimes even more % stick rate. Some individual maps were closer to 80. His Tracer mechanics were quite good as well, and unexpected because he was supposed to be a Genji one trick. After watching numerous matches from Viper, I did a sin against the Bible and visited Reddit when I still used that cesspool to see how other people thought. There are some in the world who are worried about the third temple being built and the Antichrist coming along, while I'm worried about what I'm going to read on a Reddit thread. And barely ever did I see people singing the praises of Viper, saying stuff like, wow, Viper is an animal, his stick rates are bananas. No, instead I got to read, why have I been stuck in gold for 7 years? My teams are always bad. What can I do? I hate this game. Viper is and was a much more important topic. He was on a terrible team and having insane Tracer performances on the daily. If he was on an Atlanta Rain or Florida Mayhem in 2023, sure, it wouldn't have been as wild considering who would be around him, but Shanghai was actually garbage and Viper was making them competitive by himself. I genuinely don't even think that these guys were trying to win. Shanghai was that bad. There were maps Viper essentially won on his own from getting crucial kills on repeat. This is obviously not easy to do. The only person that comes to mind is Shockwave, who made a name for himself on Vancouver Titans in 2020, looking to be the best player on that team when it was a piece of junk. To be fair for a second, Hisu did have a few good moments in 2023, but Viper was the highlight. Seeing a player who had no name whatsoever being one of the best Tracers individually is wild at this level of play. Obviously, the 2023 season was a bust. No matter how hard Viper tried, the devil consumed his bum and no fun was to be had. Not even a playoff showing. Nothing at all. Losing to Guangzhou Charge 2-3 during play-ins. I really was hoping this wouldn't be the end of Viper. Being on a team of this caliber can really give the wrong impression at face value, and funnily enough, a similar thing happened to our other friend here, Knife on Vegas Eternal. This kid was absurd, joining Vegas as a mid-season pickup, one of the most atrocious franchises Overwatch League ever saw, winning like 1 match in 2 seasons with 3 different rosters. Roster number 3 is where Knife came in, having a performance so good, Vegas actually had a competitive match against Boston Uprising, who was a top 4 team. His Tracer play was otherworldly, but the team was so goddamn bad, no wins could be had, and I do believe all the Korean players were on ping at like 4 AM, but still, this also makes Knife's performances throughout all the matches even more enticing. Yet again, the onlookers were hoping this wouldn't be the end of his career, but I'm guessing these two must have had a pact. Viper comes in saying, we were both on shit teams, let's form together and make a team that's not shit. Knife said, okay. So the team Yeti was created. Skepticism was immediately put towards this team though, mainly in the support line and Donghawk solo tanking. I do feel Dong is a good tank for Winston, Doom, and Ball, but he's a player who needs another person alongside him to fill his holes. The backline of Bliss and Irony isn't terrible, but their showings in 2023 weren't too inspiring. Bliss on Dallas, who was garbage for half the season, and Irony was on Vegas with Knife, not winning a single match. Going into Champion Series Korea, people people had Yeti more towards the bottom in the Poker Face, Simprissa, and Vesta Crew area, which makes sense. These teams were stacked to the brim until we learned later how things would really turn out. If you watched the video I made about Genesis, yeah, it's very sad to say the least. Initially, Yeti was not doing too well. Donghawk was looking like 2021 Gesture with a feed engine never shut off, ramming straight through family cars and orphanages. Nothing would stop it. Interesting how he was a lot more tempered on Atlanta Rain, but Yeti, he was giving his enemies a lot of ultimate charge, to put it nicely. The backline wasn't doing too good, lots of awful nanos by Irony. Bliss was very scrappy with his play, getting caught out quite often. Our only consistency was this DPS line previously of Team Shitter, Knife, and Viper. Coming from horrible homes to their new family, keeping the team in fights, making massive plays, Viper is still looking to have the similar performances from Shanghai Dragons, and in my opinion, Viper is the best tracer in the world when it comes to pulse bombs specifically. The sticky fingers don't miss, dude. He's just wild at landing pulse bombs. Initially, I was confused about Knife being a hit scan player. He's known for flex DPS like Tracer, Echo, or Genji. Not just anyone can whip out the hit scan and be insane at it, but apparently Knife is not a regular guy. His Cassidy and Sojourn play was actually really good. Whenever Viper was getting shut down a lot, Knife always came in to pick up the slack, and honestly, he's one of the best DPS players in Korea, period. The shock truly comes when they're both having a heater. Knife and Viper become a very terrifying DPS line to go against. The only issue was the rest of Yeti just not being explosive and very limp. With all these other top tier DPS lines, they have a better core around them. Hisong and Lip, Proper and Stalker being the most normie examples. Even Flora and Alpha Yi have a better core. What was the proof? Well, Yeti lost all these teams. At least Yeti was beating the teams they were supposed to beat, like Simprissa, Poker Face, Vesta Crew, and Genesis, shocking most people honestly. I still can't believe how bad that team is, and losing to ones they were supposed to, like Whack, Falcons, and FTG, essentially being mid right next to Runaway. Well, lower mid because Runaway 3-0'd Yeti, but still. Knife and Viper never really had a bad match. These two 100% can use the ranked mindset of it's everyone else's fault and not theirs. As a viewer, we can all see Yeti's DPS is not the problem. Until something happened behind the scenes. Obviously, we know Yeti has Shanghai Dragon's best tank player of all time in Fleta. Fate is there. They must have taken Donghawk out back, pummeled him with a club or something, because the Dong has really leveled up on his Doom and Winston play recently. Fleta was forcing him to rewatch the Car Q tips and tricks videos with All Heroes 2024 edition, Winston and Doom segment. Irony was sitting in lobbies practicing on a nade lineups for 15 hours a day. Bliss was grinding Lucio Surf, because when Yeti rolled out the gates during their first seeding match and beat Whack 3-1, delivering them their first loss in Champion Series Korea, literally everyone was shocked. Me sitting there at 7 a.m. with my eyes burning out of my head, appalled at what I just watched. When we see the rest of Yeti level up and start putting out good performances against top teams, we are able to see what Knife and Viper are truly capable of. Viper had the match of his life running Hisong shit throughout the entire thing. Knife on Sojourn and Cassidy was having a better game than Lip. Even these two leveled the hell up, which is wild because Knife and Viper were already the best players on this team, showing these two have even more punch-up potential. Out of nowhere, Yeti became a group of players that was actually really good instead of Knife and Viper being the only two making them relevant or allowing Yeti to take maps. Everyone as of late has really seemed to have started firing on all cylinders and show they can hold their own against the top teams. Going to map 5 against FTG and Team Falcons allowed us to accept we have another good team to watch. And at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. No one wants to watch 90% of matches be a 3-0 stomp because it's boring. The more quality teams we have, the better the viewing experience will be. Champion Series Korea is really looking like a coin flip at the moment in the top 4. Anyone can end up winning the stage finals coming up. Weeks before this, FTG, Falcons, and Whack pummeled Yeti into the ground. Those matches were not close. So Yeti's improvements are quite impressive, especially in such a short time frame. All the top 4 teams have DPS who are more than capable of taking over the server, and most people never thought Yeti would be in that conversation, but here we are. I see people singing the praises of Viper now, but I'm sitting here thinking, where was all this last year? Where was everyone jumping on the Viper train? The Overwatch Classic bandwagoning is very strong, I see. Going into Champion Series, I can understand why people overlooked Knife and Viper because they're competing with people who were former OWL MVPs, candidates, champions, or just storied players who showed good performances throughout their tenures, but both Viper and Knife are no slouches, and viewers are finally starting to realize how much firepower these two can put out. Especially if the rest of Yeti keeps up this good performance, this team's gonna be really scary in the future. I'm not going to say Viper is the be-all, end-all, greatest player in the world. We haven't seen much aside from Tracer and Genji from him, but Tracer has been hard meta throughout Champion Series, and he looks to be the best when it comes to pure pulse bomb usage, so you can't really argue with it. If he's this good at Tracer, surely he'd be fine at playing Echo or whatever other flex DPS heroes are asked of him. Knife is by far the best player on Yeti, being able to flex over to Tracer, Echo, or even hit scan, and that hit scan was completely unexpected to be as good as it is, by the way, which makes him an even more interesting prospect. Going forward, I'm excited to watch these two pound more cheeks since clearly they're capable of it. I'm glad to see these two are starting to really make a name for themselves, especially when their previous teams were so bad. I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts on Knife and Viper. Were you a competitive Overwatch normie and bandwagon these two after Yeti's victory against Whack, or were you always high on them? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Be sure to subscribe for more Overwatch content if you haven't already. Also check out the playlist on screen if you're interested in more competitive Overwatch content. Today, we are talking about a special player, one who went through pure misery, sadness, hardships, and success that did not come easy. It only came with time. The Overwatch community's protagonist, Fearless. Fearless was a player who was actually in the inaugural season of Overwatch League. If you only knew him from Dallas Fuel, even Houston Outlaws, you'd think like, wow, he must have been on one of the best teams that season had to offer. Nope, the good old 0-40 Shanghai Dragons. To make it even worse for him, he had to do an ad being trapped in a car with Matt Mr. X. The poor kid got his first experience on what it feels like to be jailed in the United States. First, we're going to briefly overview the Shanghai Dragons team. It was not good, obviously. There were some good pieces to the roster. Undad was a good hit scan player who got dropped midway through the season for obvious reasons. Gregory was a solid off tank. Dia was also a good player. They just couldn't muster up a win no matter what they tried. When it comes to Fearless, individually he wasn't that bad, having a few highlights throughout that year, but the mental aspect of losing and losing and losing weighs on you for sure, especially with 40 matches being played throughout the season. Of course, Fearless wasn't there for every match, joining in later on during 2018, but that's aside the point, it can still make you feel hopeless considering the overall vibe everyone else had and experiencing the back end of those losses. Worst of all, this also ruins your reputation as a player. Similar to players who joined the LA Valiant in 2021 who we talked about previously, people will just view you as a joke even if you're good individually. The public eye won't understand that and will just make the assumption that you're just a garbage player, and surely some other coaches would do the exact same thing. And I've also noticed throughout my time with Overwatch, if a team ever sucks, the tank is always pointed at first since they are the one to initiate engagements, but due to the overall cohesion being so bad, whoever that tank player is will just look awful. When in reality, if you put them in a better situation, their true capabilities will show. So what did this mean for poor Fearless after his time in the United States torture chamber? Well, after 2018, Fearless went to Contenders, grinding it out on Shanghai's academy team called Team CC. He needed to rebuild the name for himself and redeem the community's perception of him. Fearless did not want to be associated with wet wipes. He wanted an actual future. Throughout his 2019 year, he was actually on a team. I'm not going to call the 2018 Shanghai Dragons a team. It was just a disaster. So gauging improvement here is really hard. He looked better, obviously, but comparatively to Shanghai Dragons, is it really improvement? Fearless has better players overall surrounding him, and also his backline isn't altering in 5 King, so that helps as well. Any place Fearless could win a series would be an improvement to what he was dealing with with before, but he put in the time, not winning anything in contenders, but putting up performances good enough for people to actually look at him and notice that he's not a worthless piece of dirt. Also trying to overcome that mental hurdle that was the Shanghai Dragons, where presumably he felt like a piece of shit day in and day out. Personally, it was a shock to me when 2020 rolled around and Fearless returned to Shanghai Dragons. You'd figure Fearless would have some level of PTSD from what he had to deal with before. Like, yes, I know it wasn't the same roster, but still, I'd assume you'd associate Shanghai with complete garbage at this point and not want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. This 2020 roster, though, was filled to the brim with players. Why do we need 4 tanks and 5 DPS? Like, for what? The tank line ended up being Gregory, Stand 1, Fearless, and Void. The DPS was Ding, Fleta, Lip, DM, and Dia, who was on a 2-way contract with Team CC, and the backline was Izayaki, Lee Jae-gon, and Luffy. It was a gargantuan roster. These players were all varying in time. Clearly, Shanghai had no idea this team was a champion-level gold mine until much later on. Lip was not a perma starter, which is absurd to look at, and they even had Stand 1 playing Winston over Fearless, which would immediately raise eyebrows currently, like why on earth would anyone play over Fearless on Winston? But this was before we knew how good Fearless was. He was dipping his toes back into the Overwatch Tier 1 scene, coming from a mildly successful contenders roster. Fearless wasn't sending other teams to the hospital on tank. He was just performing well enough to return back to Overwatch League. Even with all of these strange swaps, Shanghai was still really successful, having, I believe, the only finals that was a reverse sweep. Seoul versus Shanghai May Melee 2020, considered one of the best matches of all time. This is where that headshot after headshot clip was birthed from the mouth of Benjamin Hook.
So for all Fearless, hunting for target, he looks like a lost schoolboy in the field being bullied for his shorts. But Brett Flynn now moving on onto the Widowmaker, taking the clutch into his own hands. The headshot after headshot after headshot. I do not believe what we have just witnessed. The Shanghai Dragons are elite.
Seoul was kind of clapping Shanghai, but they realized on match point, like, guys, wait, we have Lip on our bench and also Fearless who can play Winston? Let's stick them in. And immediately Shanghai looked like a completely different team. The maps were not really close whatsoever. It was like Fearless added this true leadership level Shanghai was missing when Stand 1 played. Every map and fight became more concise. Each player looked to be on the same page, playing to almost perfection and pulling off the reverse sweep. Fearless and Lip stock started to rise after this glorious match, and all it took was these two coming in for that series to be dominated by Shanghai. If these two didn't come in, that May Melee probably would have been a 4-0 for Seoul, but for Fearless individually, he clearly added the intangibles for them to succeed, and the community's perception would only accelerate to how good Fearless actually was. Instead of them swapping in Stand 1, Shanghai realized the same exact thing. Like, forget that kid, he's a piece of fucking garbage. Just put Fearless in as a perma starter. He was fantastic at Winston and ended up fielding Orisa over Stand 1, where I think Stand 1's only hero he would come in for was Ryan. The rest of 2020 was kind of a wash. Shanghai was head and shoulders the best team in APAC, aside from that one Summer Showdown Genji meta. Fleta Genji just couldn't keep up with Eileen. If they had Who Are You earlier, this would have been an easy 4-0 as well. Going forward, Shanghai dominated the Countdown Cup 4-0 against Hangzhou Spark, and then going into playoffs, people thought like Fearless came back. He added so much to the roster with his Winston performances, these leadership skills. Is he already going to win the league? It would have been an early end to his legendary tale if that was the case. Blizzard did see how Shanghai was being successful, his Fearless story was building, and they decided to give us the infamous Roadhog patch, which destroyed a lot of team seasons. Another shameless plug, but if you want to learn more about what truly happened there, I covered that situation previously as well. Needless to say, lots of teams didn't really have good Roadhog players. Shanghai being one of those teams, they did make top 4, but ended 3rd. Shanghai's go-to was Stand 1 for Roadhog. It just didn't work out, unfortunately. But overall for Fearless, his 2020 year was a massive improvement. 2 years prior, he ended that season losing every match, complete mental distraught, really down bad, comes back to the same franchise, practiced with a real team around him. He wins 2 stages, has incredible Winston performances, he gets Roll Star, and even with all this success, his glow up was only beginning. As 2021 rolled around, Fearless, to most people's shock, decided to leave the Shanghai Dragons. Separating upon mutual agreement, he wanted to join the Dallas Fuel, and fate came in to take his place on Shanghai, which honestly may have shaped how this entire year played out, this one roster move, but we'll touch on that later. Fearless going to Dallas did birth one of Overwatch's best tank duos ever in Fearless and Hanbin, alongside Sparkle, Doha, Jexay, and Fielder. Repel was also there, but most people just forget and he barely played anyways. Xe was also supposed to be on this roster too, but he retired before the season started due to medical issues, which forced Dallas Fuel to make different choices with how they play. Going into the season without a hitscan player is going to hurt you somewhat. Initially, Dallas wasn't starting so hot. 2021's very first tournament, May Melee, was a 2-2 split for the squadron, struggling to live up to what was promised, but thankfully something clicked, and everyone on Dallas Fuel started to become more coordinated with each other, building their teamwork up to levels almost unseen since the high-level GOATS days. Fearless was showing he wasn't just a Winston guy, he was clearly capable of playing Ryan as well, putting out great performances, really letting the leadership skills show themselves. This Dallas Fuel roster was always praised for their ability to be coordinated or do well in those hive mind comps, where these players just always seem to be on the same wavelength. I'm not sure who was responsible for it, but they just meshed so well together, it was genuinely amazing to watch. Dallas stormed through the entire tournament they barely made plans for, reaching the ultimate battle against Shanghai Dragons. All of Fearless's former teammates, aside from Fate obviously, had no answer to this comp. They attempted to mirror it, but Shanghai couldn't compete. Dallas won the 2021 May Melee 4-2. Fearless had yet another tournament under his belt, winning 2 on Shanghai in 2020, now his first one on Dallas. Earlier in the video when I mentioned how a player can be great individually, but no one will know this until they're put into a position to succeed, who would have thought that was foreshadowing Fearless's future? It's truly awe-striking. Not everything was positive though. June Joust is where this situation takes a turn for the worst for Fearless here. Yet again, Dallas was dominating North America with their new zombie comp, Winston, Diva, Reaper, Echo, Lucio, Moira. People called it zombie comp because nothing dies, by the way. Most teams just copied this team comp. Of course there were some who tried other things, but the Dallas Fuel meta was overpowering everyone. Fast forwarding to the actual stage finals where things get interesting, people just thought it was a write-off. Dallas Fuel was just the best. Atlanta Reign was also really good, which was assumed to be the finals. Shanghai and NYXL were not good initially. While NYXL did bomb out, Shanghai was like, alright, let's mirror this Lucio Moira shit, but instead of Winston, we can show Dallas Fuel that Fate can ball, creating this insane turnaround for them. In the lower bracket, Shanghai seemed to have made some sort of adaptation to these teams behind the scenes. Even that rotten-ass Orisa comp looked much better than it did before, to the point of shocking everyone and 3-0ing Atlanta Reign, making it to the finals alongside Dallas, where we now had a rivalry that was starting to build between these two teams. It also made the Fearless story much more interesting because he just left that roster, goes to a new team, wins a tournament against Shanghai, and now Dallas and Shanghai are always meeting in the finals. In the 2021 June Joust is honestly one of the best matches of all time, and if you haven't watched it, you definitely should. Figuring out what's happening might be a bit difficult if you don't understand how that comp is played. Regardless of that, it's still a good watch with plenty of good moments. As the match went on, it was to our shock that Dallas started struggling against this ball comp. It was crazy. They were the meta creators. These were the guys. It got to the point where Fearless started tilting and played Roadhog since he didn't know what to do. Fearless even tried matching the ball at points and nothing was working. Shanghai ended up winning this series 4-3 in a really back and forth series. It was absolutely crazy, which set the meta going forward, and I alluded earlier to this when I said the Fearless Fate swap out shaped the season. If Fearless stayed on Shanghai, this tournament probably would have ended completely different. I don't think anyone would have pulled out the wrecking wheel for the other stages either. Summer Showdown amplified it even more. APAC teams were just way ahead with ball skills. Fearless did try his best to pick it up, making massive improvements compared to when when he played it during the June Joust Finals, showing yet another ability of Fearless. It seems when you give him time, this guy can pick up any tank you need. Obviously, you do want him on his comfort Winston, but when it comes to Ball in 2021, this was the meta for the rest of the season, and I think most people knew that, and he tried his best to get as good as he could before playoffs. As we headed into the final stretch of 2021, I think this was the only year, unless you were a massive fan of the team, we all knew Shanghai was going to win. It was a matter of saying how many maps will Shanghai lose before they win, instead of questioning if Shanghai will win or not. They improved so much on this comp, it was probably Fate's best hero, and the entire team played so well around it to the point other people couldn't compete with it. The only two teams people saw as a threat to Shanghai was obviously Dallas Fuel and Gladiators, who were no jokes, and being the only two teams that even took maps off of Shanghai. Unexpectedly, both Dallas and Gladiators lost in the lower bracket to the Atlanta Reign. Their rush play was just too much for each of them to deal with, and Fearless ended third for the second time in a row, so close to being a champion, yet so far. Fearless just sat there after he lost, watching all of his former teammates on the Dragons pound the ever-living shit out of the Atlanta Reign 4-0, a franchise you aided putting back onto the map, a team you added so much to the previous year, all win the league without you. It probably stung quite a bit to see that. Some would say Fearless's redemption was already completed at this point. He came from the 0-40 Shanghai Dragons, grinding his way through contenders to rebuild himself, joins the Dragons again in 2020, helped him turn the view of Shanghai around completely, now viewed as a good franchise. He finished #1 seed in the regular season in 2020, the #2 regular season seed in 2021. He won 3 tournaments overall by the end of 2021, 2 on Shanghai and 1 on Dallas, and got third in playoffs 2 times in a row. And on top of all of this, most people consider him to be the best Winston in the world at this point. His final mechanics go without saying with how absurd they are. What this man does with Winston is just not possible, but somehow it is because he's doing it. Needless to say, this is a lot of success within the span of 2 years, but after watching his previous team win the league without him, it created this newfound interest for Fearless from the community. His story was becoming more and more enticing. We know he is capable of winning tournaments, but who cares about that now? We want to see him become a champion to fully complete the prophecy. When you lay it out for people to see, Fearless was on what is renowned as the worst goddamn competitive sports team in history. He builds himself back up, then becomes a champion. That is how you finish a career and create a Disney-ass storyline. This is also when people started calling Fearless the Overwatch protagonist. Almost everyone wanted to see him become a champion, and he's come so close 2 times. Going into 2022, Overwatch 2's first competitive year, lots of people were sad about Dallas Fuel due to the 5v5 change. Not seeing Fearless and Hanbin playing together was definitely a blow. These two were so good as main tank and off tank, and lots of Dallas' success the year before was due to this tank line. Having them together is truly a spectacle of the ages, but 2021 was the last we'd ever see of that. And even worse, we didn't see Fearless at all for the beginning of 2022. Hanbin took over the tank duty, being the best Zarya player in the world, forcing this rush style with Reaper, mastered that comp, and got second in kickoff clash. The classic dominant Dallas Fuel power was starting to rush in. Sure, Dallas didn't win, but undoubtedly they would be considered a top team after this tournament was over. All the new additions seemed to be fitting in perfectly. Chio was looking to be one of the best Lucios as a rookie. Strangely enough, Edison was showing really good performances, but we wanted more. We wanted to see how far this roster could take it. Could they actually win it all this time around? Mid-season Madness was the next tournament, and the meta was very diverse for tanks at least. Lots of different heroes were being played, Balls, Winstons, Rhine at times, with the backline always being Bap Zen, since this is when Zen became overtuned, getting that 225 HP, and we finally got to see Fearless, where the team looked, like, not good. I'm not saying they were awful, at least during the qualifiers. They were winning against teams they should beat and losing to Atlanta in shock, but compared to their previous stage, Dallas looked so much weaker. Now, whether that has to do with everyone struggling overall to play against the new Zen comps, or since Fearless got little playtime, maybe the new teammates were not used to his style, this did add worrying signs for Fearless going forward. Maybe he was struggling to adapt to Overwatch 2. Fate and Void on Shanghai Dragons were having a similar problem, so it's definitely possible. Of course, Dallas struggling is exaggerated slightly during qualifiers because this is relative to the standards the squad was held at, of course. Dallas just got second in the last tournament, so people had high expectations of them, and the player quality on this roster is so high. These guys weren't losing to Paris Eternal or Vancouver Titans in 2022, but honestly nobody was because those teams were shit. Stage playoffs is where the true shocking moment happened. The slight struggles we noticed Dallas having became much worse. Fearless was the starting tank aside from a few maps where Sigma was always played and Hanbin came in. Dallas bombed out faster than PGE talking to a girl. 11th place out of 12th. Looking back and seeing a team with Hanbin, Fearless, Fielder, Chio, and Sparkle getting 11th place in a tournament is just like wow. They got completely outclassed by Shanghai Dragons and Philadelphia Fusion, only winning a single map before being knocked out. There were rumblings after this tournament of people saying Fearless is starting to fall off, and you can't really argue with those people because the results speak for themselves. 11th out of 12th is just pathetic, and there's nothing else to say. This, of course, was just all part of the Dallas Fuel cycle, giving us a loss of hope and depression until Junker Queen released. Hanbin stood up and took the tank reins, where he was just by far the best in North America. Dallas Fuel immediately went back to dominating everyone, winning the Summer Showdown easily without Fearless playing. I'm sure this did cause another mental distraught moment within the guy. You think to yourself, wow, like when I play, we're shit, but now that Hanbin is perma-starting, the team is good again. This was the second stage that occurred in 2022, so it's at least gonna make you feel shitty to some degree, but instead of crying about it like a little bitch, that must have lit a fire under his ass going forward. Because for Countdown Cup, we didn't see Fearless really at all. Hanbin primarily came in on D.Va, Zarya, and Junker Queen, where Fearless came in for about 3 to 4 maps out of all 6 matches they played. Dallas did go 5-1 in this stage to finish out the regular season. They had a tournament win and #1 overall seed. But up to this point, Fearless didn't contribute anything good. The only time he played so far was when Dallas had their worst stage since 2020. But as it goes with Overwatch, sometimes balance patches just come out of nowhere and change everything, which for 2022 playoffs, that's exactly what happened. 2022 playoffs is when Overwatch 2 released to the public, allowing the new hero, Kiriko, to come into prevalence. She was broken, you know, what a shock, right? Her healing output was just unreal at launch. Suzu is Suzu. Teams were still trying to figure out comps for playoffs, presumably utilizing Kiriko in all of them, and from what I know, teams like Seoul Dynasty were actually using Roadhog, having quite a bit of success with it, until a Dallas Fuel moment happened, discovering a team comp everyone else just copied. Winston, Reaper, Sojourn, Lucio, Kiriko. This was a 100% pick rate, similar to the June Joust we talked about earlier. You needed to play this everywhere, and most importantly for Dallas, Fearless is going to need to step it up from what we saw in the midseason. He is their Winston player, so he doesn't really have a choice here. The guy has yet another opportunity to become a champion, and from those performances we saw from this squad in midseason, honestly, him becoming a champion did not look likely. So he really needed to step it up, and step it up his ass did. Being the team who created the comp, you'd expect them to be the best at it, which they were for a while. They were just leaps and bounds better than everyone else. The first match against Hangzhou was a 3-1 victory. After this match, the next opponent was Seoul Dynasty, where they got completely flattened by Dallas. This team was just the best at this comp. I mean, they created it, so obviously you'd expect that, but most importantly, Fearless looked to be in 2021 form again. His Winston performances were so good, it was the largest contributor to why these matches were being won so easily. Fearless makes so much space for his team, and especially Edison, since he's playing Sojourn. The more room he has and more opportunities he has to get kills, that means more teamfight wins for Dallas. Fearless. Earlier when I said a fire was lit under Fearless's ass, this is what I meant. During that Countdown Cup period, he must have really been practicing trying to figure out how to truly defeat the boss that is known as 5v5. Everyone looked to be on the same page, and the 2021 Dallas Hivemind was back. The next opponent who stood in Dallas's way was the Houston Outlaws, who came off of knocking Shock into the lower bracket, which they of course come into play later on. When it comes to Houston Outlaws, they looked good in the first map, taking it away from Dallas, but the rest of that series was not really close, and Dallas beat them 3-1. And for the first time, Fearless made it. He wasn't watching someone else win, he could actually play with the opportunity to be a champion this time around. It was just a matter of time to see who was going to be their opponent. After Shock got put into the lower bracket, they had a historical Shock moment of just burning through every team, improving and improving day by day. Proper was dominating the best Sojourns who stood up to him, everyone else was firing on all cylinders, beating Houston and reaching the finals against Dallas Fuel. This match actually had so many interesting storylines behind it. If Shock won the finals, Proper would most likely win finals MVP, having the best season any person ever has in Overwatch history. I mean, he kind of already did, but this would add more to it. Shock would be a franchise champion 3 times. Also, Violet and Striker would be the first 3-time champions. If Dallas wins, Rascal would be the first 3-time champion. Dallas would be the third of the inaugural season's bottom 4 teams to win the league, and Fearless would finish the rags to riches story. These narratives alone probably made this one of the best matches of all time immediately, but it couldn't be a 4-map boring snooze fest of a series. It needed to be good. Most people thought Dallas was just going to 4-0 Shock and the match would be over fast, but that was far from the truth. This series was very competitive for the most part. Both teams were taking maps off of each other. Players who were new to the Overwatch computer game probably questioned what they were looking at, since most players cannot comprehend this stuff unless Sojourn kills someone, which there was plenty of. Proper was kind of running Edison's pockets in the first half, where Shock actually just looked better at some points. And this was 100% Dallas's match to lose. This group of players were never going to have an opportunity better than this one. The meta was absolutely perfect for each of them. Chio and Fielder were both insane at Lucio and Kiriko, Sparkle and Edison on both Reaper and Sojourn, then most importantly, Fearless on Winston, who most see as the best Winston of all time. So when Shock was up 3-2 in that finals, it was anus clinching. If you watch that match live, you cannot tell me your asshole was not melted. I don't really root for teams very often, but I really wanted Dallas to win, and I think lots of people did, mainly for Fearless, to watch his redemption come full circle. Again, experiencing being on one of the worst rosters ever, getting so close in 2020, then watching his old team win without him in 2021, he needed to win now. He's never going to have an opportunity this good again. And it seems Dallas Fuel realized this exact same thing in those final 2 maps. Edison grabbed a suitcase, he took Proper, squeezed him in that thing, and sent his ass flying back to Korea, being absolutely stone cold. Edison was putting Proper into the ground. For Fearless, the last 2 maps were just him saying that he is the best Winston in the game. A complete and utter Sojourn and Monkey Gap. The Shock couldn't handle the pressure, and they just folded against Dallas. On the final map, we finally knew that it was Fearless's time.
Fearless in the front line, overtime into Soundberry coming up. San Francisco, they can run by the field. Now Sparkle, Proper's found him. Has an opening here. Has a chance. But Sparkle's just been down. San Francisco with a 4 versus 3. And Edison from the top rope hits him with the RKO. Struggle to try and chase him down. Gets his revenge into the trouble here. Violet's able to find a kill, and the Shock aren't done. You're going to have a 6-1 advantage here for the Dallas Fuel, though. Only 2 plays for San Francisco. It's not much to work with here. Haven't touched the card. The ball's going to be there. It's going to be forced away. He's in grave danger indeed. The touch is there from Striker. We had the depth blossom, but there's no chance.
He did it. The guy fucking did it. After all the years of torment and trying to become a champion, he finally did it. Having a rough start to his season, where rumblings of thinking the guy was starting to fall off was going around, getting 11th in midseason is just awful for the standards of this team. It must have just been a fluke, apparently. Fearless won the finals MVP, and his years of grinding finally paid off. The community was ecstatic for him, of course, especially if you've been watching him since season 1 and followed him up to this point. People call him the Overwatch main character because of his story. His rags to riches experience is enough to show his perseverance and dedication to himself, and not give up to become something he always wanted to be, a champion. Fearless, of course, did play a little bit more in 2023 on Houston Outlaws, where the guy finally retired afterwards, but the redemption story was finished after 2022, and the Houston Outlaws saga was just more of a highlight. There's no real point of talking about it here because it doesn't add anything. All we can say about Fearless is that he has one of the most interesting personality stories like ever. Stuff like that doesn't happen very often unless you're watching straight out of Compton maybe. Fearless could fit there possibly. His story is in the same vein at the very least. So it now bears the question, do you think Fearless is the greatest player ever, or how do you feel about his story overall? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and leave a... Throughout Overwatch history, there's been a lot of greats. We always talk about your Violets, Lips, even a Silver 3 or 2. This time, I wanted to talk about a player who no one ever really mentions anymore when it comes to the competitive Overwatch scene, one that has a very bizarre story behind her Overwatch League path, and being someone who created a shockwave throughout the entire community. Way back in the Apex days, competitive Overwatch was very ghetto in comparison to now. We also had people who were like 25 grinding, Ryu Jaehong for example. You're never seeing that anymore. Obviously, back then, we had our prepubescent masterminds in Apex, who were you and friends were like 4 playing on stage, but finding a player that was 17 was actually considered young, at least for Apex standards, and better yet, it was a girl that was competing, having top-level performances in ranked, and even trying to join teams. I can't believe it myself, she might have cooties. Geggery was the first and only Apex signing that was a girl, being a tank player, traditionally known for Zarya, and a very good one as well. Sporting great tracking and aim with Zarya's projectiles, a ranked warlord essentially. Having an exceptional record, and we're talking like 400 games played with an 80% win rate level of exceptional. Even having matches in official Nexus tournament qualifiers, and yes, this disaster of a UI was actually being broadcasted for people to watch. Regardless, Geggery had a very good performance throughout one of the matches she played. Sadly, people did not look at this as amazing though, they went right for the throat. Geggery did not make her name from skill, rather, she made her name due to cheating allegations. This of course is not uncommon, people are accused of cheating in a lot of gaming spaces, and rightfully so, especially when money is involved, careers can be had from streaming and winning tournaments, so it's understandable, lots of players get busted for cheating, plenty of people even stream using cheats without being blatant about it. Look at console Overwatch with all the keyboard and mouse with aim assist zimming shit, it's disgusting. Geggery's accusations are a lot more interesting and weird though, it's like eye-opening levels of confusion. Apparently, her performances were so good during one of these qualifier matches, 2 of her opponents named Strobe and Elta say her aiming is inhuman and too precise. These people were quoted saying some over-the-top stuff as well. According to Kotaku, Strobe was quoted saying the following: "If this problem is confirmed as a hack, it would have caused a problem to our career and reputation. How will you take responsibility for that?" Following up with, "If there's a problem with our sponsors and such, I may visit Geggery's house with a knife in hand. I am not joking." This guy was ready to battle apparently. Blizzard ended up contacting UW Artisan, that being Geggery's team at the time, assuring everyone like Geggery's not cheating guys, let's stop with the hogwash. But her name needed to be cleared up. Later doing a live stream where she played ranked with one of her fellow teammates for about an hour to prove that she's not cheating. I found conflicting statements saying Geggery did it on her own accord, and others saying she was forced to. It doesn't entirely matter since a stream of this manner doesn't prove anything. Anyone's going to be uncomfortable in that situation, so she'll most likely perform badly. And remember, she was like a 16-year-old kid while this was all going on. But if she does perform well, does that mean that she's cheating in their eyes? Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see this proving anything, and no footage I've watched of her makes me stop and be like, wow, this bitch is cheating. She's just a really good Zarya and Diva player. The fact it escalated to this degree is crazy and unheard of in the Overwatch scene. Both Elta and Strobe gambled their careers on her cheating, saying if she wasn't cheating, they would quit forever, which they ended up doing since Geggery obviously wasn't cheating. For anyone wondering, both players apologized for their accusations, and Strobe admitted to and apologized for the knife comment. My favorite part of this whole situation is that she was playing with a $13 mouse. You got these kids grinding on these sophisticated top-of-the-line gaming mice, and here comes Geggery with the classic wireless gaming mouse, optical mice, adjustable DPI with LAPT USB for PC, F9, X1, Q7, K8 for $2.99 at Walmart. Geggery is an absolute animal for that, and sadly that piece of junk mouse I found was not her actual one. Believe me, I tried to find the brand. Unfortunately, I could not, but one day I will find it and personally have Geggery sign the thing. That shit will be encased in gold. Regardless of that absurd situation, Geggery obviously had a bright future ahead when it came to playing competitively. Sadly, the results of her Apex teams were not good. The best was on a team called Rock's Orcas, and it's crazy to look back and see this roster when Striker, 9K, Krong, and Aid were on this team, who mostly all won championships either as a player or coach. Rock's placed 13th to 15th, which is obviously very bad. Geggery went Diva for most of her matches, and remember, this was 2017, so player quality was nowhere near as good as modern day. For the time, her play was fine individually, just overall, Rock seemed to be very uncoordinated, causing their bad performance. This didn't take away from Geggery or any of these players being good prospects. I mean, look at Striker. He went to Boston Uprising, having a great season there, and Geggery went to Shanghai Dragons, being the first female Overwatch League player, and it was a really big deal for gaming as a whole, considering not a lot of women play at this level or even signed to Tier 1. There were plenty of articles written about Geggery signing and highlighting it. I'm glad she persevered through all the cheating accusation hell and ended up going to a team. Unfortunately, it ended up being 2018 Dragons. The one and only team we all know who went 0-40, having a record for most competitive losses in professional history. It's really easy to say all these players are horrible, no good, they're worthless, whatever it may be, which most conclude from face value 0-40 is ungodly, but I feel this is more of a Murphy's Law situation where anything that can go wrong will go wrong. If one were to actually go back and watch Shanghai's matches from 2018, they were taking maps and making other ones close. Unfortunately, they just ended up losing every match. There was also drama with specific players, undead or undad as some people refer to them as, having like 5 kids between different women. Mental doomage was everywhere, communication between Chinese and Korean players was difficult, and nothing good came out of this situation for anyone involved. Geggery didn't play up to stage 3 and was also harassed online saying she looks like a boy or what have you, even though she wasn't playing at all. But I'm gonna give a tip of advice here. When people are insulting you online, whether you're trying to make a video or they're just generally insulting you, just take a step back and think inside your head who this person actually is behind the screen. It's going to be a dorky pizza face nerd that smells like black mold and wet cheese. There's no reason to give a rat's ass about what they're saying to you. Even with all this, she persevered through her harassment and actually played for the first time during stage 3, which overall was an exciting thing. But even with the Fearless and Geggery tank power, 0-40 was inevitable. I'd still say Shanghai's best players were these two and also Dia. After 2018, the entire roster was dropped aside from Geggery, Dia, and Fearless, who eventually ended up leaving anyways, returning back to Overwatch contenders, and as we all know, becoming one of the greatest Winston players of all time. I'm not gonna say the best Winston because Gushue exists, but that's a completely different argument. Incels were very angry, but normal people were excited to see Geggery come back with a different roster, hopefully a better environment, and like actually win a match maybe. That would be pretty cool. 2019 being the year of GOATs, Diva and Zarya were played consistently, so it's fair to expect Geggery to play a lot more considering those are her best heroes, which she did play Diva sometimes, not as much as we'd expect because Shanghai was one of those teams who didn't play traditional GOATs very often. It was fielded from time to time for maybe a certain map or point, but Shanghai was a team who used Sombra GOATs, which in turn makes Diva be taken out of the lineup, so Geggery wasn't really ever starting since Ding would play Sombra for Shanghai. When it came to the good old Zarya play, DM was the one who took that spot up, so Geggery ended up being on the bench for a lot of 2019. Towards the end of the season, Shanghai obviously started that DPS comp, which they won stage 3 playing, being very good at it, but again, it wasn't really in Geggery's wheelhouse to play any of these heroes, so she was still on the bench, which was quite unfortunate considering how I feel Geggery was an underutilized prospect. In the early days of Overwatch, she was actually really good, and when someone rots away on the bench, they can't reach any potential since their time in officials is so low. Similar thing happened with Who Are You in my eyes. If he actually got to play more on Shanghai Dragons, he'd probably be a better overall player instead of the greatest Genji of all time. Maybe he could have been the best player of all time. I'm not gonna say Geggery's performances when she did play were the elusive, inhuman actions touted by Strobe and Elta, but she was definitely a good player. She never got fielded in stage 4. They had a player named Envy play Diva, which was atrocious. I'm not even gonna look over it. It's that fucking disgusting. It's not even worth looking at. After 2019, Geggery was still kept on the roster. They also kept Ding, DM, and Luffy. With 222 Rollock finally going into effect for an entire season, now would be Geggery's chance to be a full-time starter, right? Well, she did play in this invitational preseason event, which was nice to see, but there was a slight issue when it came to Geggery going into the next season. Void got signed. If you've ever watched Overwatch League season 2020 and 2021, you know who Void is. If you only know him from the 2022 and 2023 Overwatch League seasons, you'll be shocked to realize he's one of the best off-tank players literally ever. He was right next to Fleta on the MVP ballot of 2020. Choyobin and Void were just the absolute pinnacle of Diva, Sigma, and Zarya play. Whatever off-tank was needed, they were going to be the best. So what does that mean for poor Geggery? Well, sorry sister, you're not gonna play. Viewers did accuse Dragons of holding Geggery as a player for marketing purposes, essentially saying we have the only girl in Overwatch League, which I don't agree with. For one, she's playing under Void. I don't really need to elaborate on that. Nobody's going to play over Void. 2, Shanghai's roster was massive with a clear lack of understanding on how to utilize it. They had stand 1, Fearless, Void, and Geggery for tanks. The DPS was Lip, Fleta, Ding, DM, and Dia. And their
Gee, I sure am glad that freak bop was just a figment of my imagination and can't hurt me. Now I can finally get some shut-eye. Please, shoot back! I'm begging you!
Oh, babe, am I really that ugly?
Oh wait, it's just a normal customer. Can I take an order?
Yeah, can I just get a Krabby Patty, some French fries?
Alright, and from here to go?
To go, but can it be quick? I need to catch a bus.
Yeah, sure. SpongeBob!
Yep.
Sorry about what I said earlier. I just haven't been sleeping well lately, and SpongeBob characters with currencies in their name will stop showing up.
Just put the cut fries in the bag, man.
Oh, yeah, sorry, here you go. Only $9.50.
You guys accept freak pay?
No.
What about extra fruity mod pay?
Don't make me turn you into a frowny friend.
Alright, okay, I'm done. Here you go.
Have a good one.
Okay, you know that the channel you're on is called Nipple Odian, right?
1 power chimps with Geraldo is finally possible again with a little bit of a caveat. So let me walk you guys through everything that's happening. Now, first off, when I say 1 power chimps, it is true that we are going to be playing with chimps rules, so nothing happening over there. We're not going to be altering the rules in order to make things easier for us. But I do want to mention two things. Number one is the Geraldo starting price is $810. So in order for you to start this thing, you need to give yourself some extra cash. That means that it's straight up just not possible in an actual chimps game. That's why we're doing it in a challenge, and we gave ourselves a little extra cash. But the reason why 1 power chimps is actually possible is because of a huge bug happening with Geraldo. Now, the bug, if you guys have not heard what it is, it has to do something with the Redraft potion, which gets unlocked when Geraldo hits level 11. Alright, so it's gonna take a while until we reach level 11 in our game. So let me show you guys what's happening in Sandbox. So as you guys can see, we're missing a couple of these items in stock. So what happens with the Redraft potion and the bug is that once you use the Redraft potion, it resets your entire shop, including the Redraft potion that you just used. And I know we're playing chimps mode, but this is actually very useful in a normal game where, for example, you can have infinite money. So for example, if I use all of these sniper abilities and I just use the Redraft potion, we're making more money than we're spending. So essentially, this is free money and it is infinite money. So yeah, this is actually a pretty game-breaking bug. So now we know how the Redraft potion bug works. The most important resource that we have in the start game is going to be money. If we can save our money, if we can plan around it, then probably the late game is not going to be as difficult. But we need to be very careful with how everything works because they just keep nerfing Geraldo. So yeah, Ninja Gamer really wants to bring Geraldo in line. And if you guys have been paying attention to the nerfs, then you probably know that he has been completely destroyed in the past few updates. But if you don't, let me just mention some of the nerfs. So first off, the damage of these turrets got reduced from 3 to 2, and then the level 2 turrets got decreased from 7 to 6, and then eventually to 5. The duration of the creepy idol got reduced, but we get more of these guys in stock. The Jar Pickles duration got reduced from 8 to 5, and then we also lost some 45 damage on like levels 11 to 15, I think. The duration of the cow potion got reduced from 10 to 5, and then from 15 to 10 rounds for level 2. The glue has less pierce. The sharpening stone used to give +1 damage, now it gives +2 pierce, plus it lasts a lot shorter. The restock time of the Warhero's Cape got increased, and now it's more expensive. And I could just keep going with all these items, but you guys get the point. They have nerfed probably every aspect possible of Geraldo, and that is why this thing is still really tough, and you have to be really careful with using these items. Now for the lead balloons, this is what you do, because Geraldo cannot pop lead balloons and neither can the turrets, so you need to wait to level 8 so that you can actually unlock the trace fire. Now we don't have the money to buy level 8, so here's what you do. For the last 3 lead balloons around 28, you do it like this. You drop a glue over there, then on the way back you want to drop a glue here in the middle, so you glue these guys, and if everything's done correctly, then you can just do this, and bam, that's it. That's the last 28. Alright, so round 3, I've literally been doing this for over half an hour, and I think I finally came up with a way to do this. I'm not sure how reliable this is, but it worked once, and that's all we need. So I'm doing the last 3 leads. This is by the way not the way that we used to do this thing, but now that we have 4 creepy idols starting from update 44, this is actually kind of doable. So the last lead out of the first ones, actually, because we kind of separated them in 2 parts. The last lead I used the creepy on the left side to push it back, and we're gonna get a nice crusher over here. There's gonna be 1 lead missing, but because we have 4 creepy idols again, as I mentioned, starting from update 44, we can keep this guy in place permanently. So we just have 2 of these guys in stock. This was not possible. So essentially what's gonna be happening is that we're gonna permanently keep this guy in place, and eventually the crusher is actually gonna come off cooldown. There you go, the crusher came off cooldown, and this is how we beat round 30. Absolutely not the way to do it, but hey, we got it done. Here's the thing with round 37, we do have lead balloons in this round. We're still not level 8, but we can buy it. So if you save enough money, you're gonna be able to buy level 8. So we have to do it actually. Okay, so round 40 Moab, the majority of the damage is probably gonna get done by this thing, by the cherries far. It is last for 10 rounds. That was 5 rounds for some reason. Let me do the Reach potion and let's do 4 more of these guys. Yeah, this is way too much turrets. We should not be having this amount of turrets. Maybe I should place a bunch of these cherries fires as well. But again, we're not exactly missing damage. So if we're not missing damage and we're just buying these cherries fires for no reason, that just means that we're spending money that we're not supposed to be spending. So yeah, let's just chill. We have $40,000, but we still have reached the ultra late game. Alright, so a bunch of monsters around 83 free play has started, but let's update our defense a little bit. So before we hit the reach of, let me just give the sharpening stone to a couple of these guys. These are actually becoming a little bit more serious. In the past few rounds, we did actually get improvements on a lot of our items. The cow potion lasts a lot longer. The sharpening stone now gives +2 pierce. Jerry's fire is a lot stronger and actually lasts for 10 rounds now, and the blade trap is a lot stronger as well. So now we've placed everything. Let's just let this round and let's see if we get anything. You know, I think that's actually fine. So let's do a reach potion. Let's refresh the entire shop and let's do the exact same thing. So I was placing up these turrets. There we go. Let's start giving these guys some of the sharpening stones. We do have a hefty amount of money, and I think this is gonna be more than enough for the entire run. So let me not jinx it. Actually, let me just save the money just in case. So let's give this guy Jerry's fire, and that's gonna be about it for the next few rounds, I think. And as we're approaching the 90s, this is a really good time to dump our stock because when Geraldo reaches level 20, he does a refresh by himself. And because all these durations on the items are fixed to about 10 rounds, if you give the items around 91, it's essentially gonna last throughout the entirety of the game. So let me just give it cow potion by the way because we have DTs in this one. And hold on, is it gonna be enough? I think it is. Let me just do it like this. Do these blade traps do actually it is something to the DTs? I'm not exactly sure. Oh my god, that bunny snipe. Alright, so round 91, it's time for us to dump our stock and just to refresh everything using the redraw potion. So let's go like this. I think I guess I placed everything that I wanted to place. So let's just do a redraw. Let's just refresh everything. Let me find just a couple more of these turrets. We got 4 new ones. I think just having here at the top is gonna be fine. Let me give the sharpening stone to a bunch of these guys. Let me give the cherries fire to a bunch of these guys. And we have $70,000, which I think is gonna be more than enough actually. So let me actually just place 1 more of these upgraded genies as well. And yeah, this just makes the entirety of the 90s look like an absolute joke. So we have $76,000. We are gonna be making money through the 90s as well. So you know what? Let me just redraw it up again. So let's start placing these turrets. I feel like maybe we can place some of these guys here in the middle. So let's go like this. Let's sharpen them up for absolutely no reason. Let's give them the cherries fires onto this thing. And we do have a genie active, so let's just not go too ham with the genies. But I guess we can afford to place a couple of glues, I guess, here on the start of the track. You know, if you were to play this legitimately and you don't have infinite resources, you're being very careful with the money. But we did play kind of a very safe early and mid game, so we're left with a bunch of money now. So I do think that we can absolutely afford to spoil ourselves and just spend a bunch of money in the late game and just do. I guess the genies are gonna be the main source of damage, right? It's not that these guys are turrets are bad or anything like that, especially because we have like how many? Like over 20 of these guys easily. And I went to purples, so let's just use a blade maelstrom to deal with these purples. And they're gonna be a lot more, so I'll just use more of these guys. Final purple rush. Let's use the blade maelstrom. And you know what? One of the genies is priced, so why not use a second one? Yeah, this is just absolutely trivial for all these genies and the turrets and everything that we have. But at the same time, guys, this is just due to a bug, so this is not gonna be happening. But keep in mind, this Geraldo 1 tower chimps used to be possible legitimately. It just gives you an idea how OP Geraldo was when he came out. And it's been like what, close to 10 updates since Geraldo came out, and Ninja is still nerfing the guy. Is he actually that strong? I don't know. He was pretty strong to me. So let's use the blade trap and let's, you know what? Let's do a reach of thingy one more time. So I think I'm just gonna stop using these turrets because they don't exactly do that much. Maybe we can just drop something like, I don't know, just a couple of trace fires just for the fun of it. And Geraldo reached level 20, which means a free restock. Thank you very much. So let's place both of the genies that we have from the Geraldo restock. You know what? It's just but we're gonna place 1 Paragon Golem. I'm scared to place the second one. I'm not exactly sure if we're gonna have the damage. Actually, you know what? We're probably gonna beat this with like 2 genies, so we might as well buy the second one, right? Let's just do it. And finally, round 98 with about $20,000. So we do have 2 Paragon Power Stones for absolutely no reason on chimps mode because we can just afford it. But yeah, we have 2 genies active. This should be more than enough for round 98. You know what? Let me just place something like, you know, like these guys, the creepy idols on the side. Let's just place a couple of glues, I guess, and let's use up all 4 of our maelstroms because you know what? We are probably gonna have 4 back. I have a feeling. Yeah, that's probably gonna be about it for round 98. You know what? Let me just genie it up. Let's just place a couple more of these genies because I feel like we need a little bit of extra damage. And I think that you're ever gonna see this. We have 4 genies on screen. This should not be possible, by the way. And there goes round 98. And let's, you know what? Let's do it one last time. Actually, we do have a bunch of my remains, so let's do it a couple more times. Let's place a couple of genies. Let's redraw. Let's place a couple more genies. And how many genies can we end the game with? So this is, I know, do we have like 10 already? The cow potion expires. So let's give these guys cow protection for the deities. And we have 1 more redraw potion in us, but we cannot buy genies. But I feel like how many do we have? We have 5. I feel like 5 is gonna be more than enough for the bad round 100. And there it is, guys. 1 tower chimps with Geraldo using a bug. And of course, just I want to mention again that $810 is the starting price. So that is just, it's just simply not possible to buy Geraldo because of all the nerfs. But if you were to buy it thanks to this bug, you can absolutely complete the 1 tower chimps, no problem with Geraldo. But that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'm gonna see you all in the next one.
Tetris.
the planet warms, the more we'll need to cool it down. Yet our cooling systems are heating the Earth as they consume fire. If there's any doubt that solid-state batteries are actually here, well, here's proof. Or is it? Future Matt interjecting here. Now, this is a republication of a video that I originally published on July 16th. I've unlisted that video and linked to it in the description below. But this version has some additional notes I'll be dropping in as we go in this new version. The reason? Well, shortly after I published my initial review of the Yoshino solid-state battery pack that I bought for myself on Amazon, some people left comments that the company Tech Insights had published a report saying it wasn't solid-state technology after all after they broke it down and tested it. However, when I looked at the free report that Tech Insights made available, it raised more questions than it answered. So I reached out to them to start my own investigation, as well as to Yoshino for comment. Now, I'm going to be publishing a follow-up video on my investigation later, but didn't want to leave the original video up without noting those issues. I'll be popping in again to highlight those issues, but keep all of this in mind as you watch, because there's some serious potential issues with how Yoshino is marketing the battery pack. But back to the video. You can actually buy this for yourself like I did and get it delivered to your door in a day or two. No, solid-state batteries aren't everywhere and definitely not mass market yet, but they aren't vaporware and always 5 years away. Just like this Yoshino battery, which I'll get into details in just a second, there's other solid-state batteries right on the cusp of ending up in consumer electronics devices near you. But do these early versions live up to the hype? And who is this Yoshino battery really good for? I'm Matt Farrell. Welcome to Undecided. This video is brought to you by Ground News, but more on that later. I published a video a few weeks back about the progress of solid-state batteries and how they're finally here. To say I got some pushback would be an understatement. I received comments like, nuclear fusion has some company. It's really funny. It's not accurate, but it is funny. I'll give you that. Now, I guess I sparked quite a reaction. I really opened myself up to that point of view with how I talked about the latest developments. Everyone has a different opinion of what a product being here as in now means. Does it mean it's mass market, or just that it's the first cells that are shipping? It's a bit of a charged topic. Now, my focus on EVs didn't help that matter either. Bottom line, I could have done a much better job clearly defining what I meant by here and now in the video. Now, I'll amp up my clarity on that kind of stuff next time. But in a nutshell, I was talking about how many companies are now producing solid-state battery cells for actual use and or testing by partners. We're officially in the manufacturing ramp-up stage, so figuring out the chemistry and if it works is kind of in the rearview mirror in some cases. That is a major milestone and a sign that the technology has hit a turning point. It's definitely a positive change. However, I should have focused on a product that you can actually get in your hands today, or to quote another comment from the video, until I can order from Amazon, it's not even close. So please, no solid-state information unless it's in your possession. Okay, here you go. I bought myself this Yoshino B330 solid-state portable power station on Amazon and had it delivered to my house in 2 days. And to be clear, I have no relationship with Yoshino. This is the smallest version of the battery pack, which has 330 watts of continuous power and 241 watt-hours of storage. They also have a version that scales all the way up to the B4000, which has 4,000 watts of continuous power and 2,611 watt-hours of storage capacity. In general, the reason you might want a small battery like a B330 is for going camping or reserving emergency power to charge up your phone or laptop in a blackout. The larger batteries are also great for those same uses, but they're even better for running power tools at a work site that doesn't have power available, or backing up more substantial appliances in a blackout, or even getting your entire home back online. The little guy I have right here weighs in at 9.9 pounds. It can charge in a couple of hours. What's nice to see on even a small unit like this is that you can charge through one of 3 ways. 1, the DC input on the back, 2, solar panels, and 3, USB-C power delivery on the front. You can also tandem these up to speed up the charging, so you can be charging through both the USB-C and DC or solar input on the back all at the same time. There's a couple of DC output terminals on the front, as well as 2 AC outlets, 2 USB-A and 2 USB-C ports. The main focus of Yoshino for this design is meant for on-the-go power, like as an emergency backup or for use during camping trips, so there's an LED light bar that can act as a light source. Now, it's not the brightest light in the world, but in a pinch, it's a nice thing to have. And much like other battery packs in this type of product, you can also connect to it through an app via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And this allows you to install firmware updates and to control it remotely. It's not an earth-shattering app, but it is well designed and easy to navigate. It shows you what ports are currently active, the power draw, and how much time is left on the current charge. You can also monitor its charging status, which can be handy when you've got some solar panels plugged into it. So what's inside this thing? Well, it's a solid-state cell that's using an NCM or nickel cobalt manganese formula, which might sound similar to the widely used NMC or nickel manganese cobalt. The reason for the different order of the letters usually reflects the different ratios of those elements in the chemistry for the battery cathode. And the big difference, though, is the use of a solid electrolyte versus a liquid or gel version. For Yoshino, they're using an inorganic polymer composite or IPC for their electrolyte between the anode and the cathode. I reached out to Yoshino for additional details on the battery and found out some interesting things. The team didn't give me the exact formulation of the battery for probably obvious reasons, but did share details of the safety testing done by USA Energy Assurance Labs. Yoshino's batteries were put through the paces for thermal runaway, nail penetrations, and short circuits, which are some of the big selling points of solid-state batteries. This battery is substantially safer in those regards than a typical lithium-ion battery with a liquid electrolyte. Okay, Future Man is back. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, Tech Insights found a large amount of liquid inside the battery cell when they broke it open, which is the primary reason they concluded that it's not solid-state, for obvious reasons. Now, Yoshino is still standing behind their claim and points to their use of an IPC solid electrolyte. There are research papers into IPCs for solid-state batteries that show it's a potential viable path, but the amount of liquid that Tech Insights found raises big questions about all of Yoshino's claims. I shared those claims with the Tech Insights team, so they're going to go back and do some more testing to fill in some of the gaps that I raised in their initial report. In fact, by the time you're seeing this, that test is already done. I'm also working with a fellow YouTuber and friend of mine to do his own breakdown and analysis of the battery. He's a PhD student at the university and has all lab equipment to do all the stuff that he needs to do, which should be underway by the time that you see this video. I'm really eager to see if we find the same exact thing that Tech Insights did or not. As soon as that follow-up video is available, I'll be linking to it in the description of this video. It's taking some time to pull all of it together because I want to make sure I have as much information and facts as possible for an informed answer. There's also some other key attributes that set this battery apart that shouldn't be a surprise if you're familiar with solid state. They're more energy dense, which means you can get the same power output and storage in a smaller package. They're also better on the cycle life front too, so these should last longer than the competition that's out there. But how's this look in context? And context is super important when looking at technologies like this, as well as all of your news stories. Misinformation and bias shows up in all reporting, which is why I'm excited to have Ground News as a sponsor. Created by a former NASA engineer, the Ground News app and website things like Blue Eddy, Anchor, and EcoFlow. So let's take a look at some of those. And since I have the Yoshino B330, let's compare it to similar sized batteries like the EcoFlow River 2, Blue Eddy EV3A, and Anchor 522. When you look at the price, it looks like it falls right in line with the competition. However, when you divide the cost of the unit by the watt-hour capacity, you start to see the difference. Yoshino is roughly $1.24 per watt-hour, while the others chime in between 90 cents and $1.12 per watt-hour. That means Yoshino's battery, which is a first-gen product, comes in 11 to 37% more costly than the competition per watt-hour. However, the key benefits of solid state is safety, longevity, and energy density. So how's it compare on that last one? Well, not so great for the model that I've got. Yoshino is at 53.56 watt-hours per kilogram, which is just slightly lower than the Blue Eddy. But both EcoFlow and Anchor have 73 and 76 watt-hours per kilogram. So what's going on there? This made no sense to me. So I decided to expand my comparison to Yoshino's largest battery, the B4000, to comparable batteries. I picked the EcoFlow Delta Pro, the Blue Eddy AC300 B300 combo, and Anchor Solix F3800. This is where it got more perplexing. Okay, back again. A bunch of people took issue with how I broke down the watt-hours per kilogram in my review. In this video, my intent was to review and look at the Yoshino battery from a user experience perspective. That means the final product that you have in hand and will be picking up, tossing into the back of your car, and lugging around. The watt-hours per kilogram of the actual battery cells isn't important from that perspective. That's why I did the watt-hours based on the product weight and product cost. I still stand by that, but wanted to call that out. In the follow-up investigation video, I'll be getting into all the battery cell details. Now, these models aren't exactly an apples-to-apples comparison because of how they're intended to be used. The Blue Eddy AC300 B300 combo is actually 2 separate boxes that you have to use together. It's meant more for permanent permanent or semi-permanent installation like whole home backup or for an RV. Now, in terms of power output and storage though, it is comparable, which is why I picked it. Money-wise, the numbers across the board landed in a very similar region, at least when non-sale prices were used for comparison. The Yoshino clocked in between 21 and 29% more expensive than the competitors. It's not shocking, but the watt-hours per kilogram was very different. The Yoshino B4000 has 107 watt-hours per kilogram versus a range of 53 to 80 watt-hours per kilogram. That makes the B4000 101% more energy dense than the comparable Bluetti and 34% more energy dense than the EcoFlow. This is more of what I was expecting to see when I dove into this comparison in the first place. So why is the smaller battery, the one that I've got, so behind in the comparison? And my hunch was the physical design of the product and all the bells and whistles. Yoshino's battery has a large and heavy metal handle that wraps around the entire box. EcoFlow's River 2, on the other hand, is all plastic with no light, which means there's a weight savings from materials and components. This hunch was confirmed when I reached out to Yoshino for more information. The team compromised some additional weight for the sake of additional functionality and aesthetics. Okay, another reason which could be obvious given the controversy is that if this is not a true solid-state battery, then you're not going to see a massive difference in watt-hours per kilogram. However, it's also worth noting that just using a solid-state electrolyte doesn't automatically double or triple your specific energy. Yoshino's claims have always been around using a solid electrolyte, but the chemistry of their anode and cathode isn't novel. They're not using a lithium metal or anodeless design like QuantumScape. If they're telling the truth about their solid-state setup, that could explain why their anode and cathode chemistry is better than the lithium iron phosphate competition, but not that different from what we normally see in a nickel manganese cobalt battery, which is what they claim to have. Again, I'll have a full breakdown on the report when we have everything pulled together. Having one in hand, I can say it's nice to pick up and it looks great, but I personally have preferred a plastic casing to save some weight. However, those design choices become less impactful as you scale up the battery pack size, which is why we see the B4000 come out way ahead on that front. All that raises the big question, why would you want this? Well, it really comes down to your use case. So let's start with the small battery packs. If you're looking for the latest weight and cheapest small battery pack to take with you on a trip, then you're most likely looking at the EcoFlow or the Anchor. However, if you're looking for a battery that will last you an incredible time span with the least degradation, is also exceptionally safe and can work in a wide range of temperatures without concern, then you're probably looking at the Yoshino. In this small size category though, it's a tough sell. So what about the larger battery format? Well, many of the same arguments hold true here, but this is where the weight comes into play. If you need a largest battery that you can get to easily toss into the back of your truck or RV for a trip, even though the Yoshino B4000 costs more, it's dramatically lighter weight. It's half to 1/3 the weight of the competition. Lugging a 53-pound or 24-kilogram battery onto the back of your truck sounds way more appealing than a 100 to 130-pound or 57 to 60-kilogram battery. On top of that, the Yoshino will have a longer lifespan and is safer too. However, if you're looking for a battery that could serve as a whole home backup with a semi-permanent installation, the Yoshino isn't even on the table. Its current batteries are designed for a lifestyle type of brand, on-the-go uses, camping, and emergency backups. There is an elephant in the room though. Many of the companies like Bluetti, EcoFlow, and Anchor have massive sales and promotions that drive that cost even further down. If you pick up their batteries on sale, there's no contest for the value that you get. In that case though, it's important to remember one thing. This is the first-gen Yoshino battery. There's no doubt they're working on a second-generation product that should be cheaper and more competitive on that front. The next crop of batteries should also be even more compelling on the energy density and performance front too. But that said, for a first-gen product, I think the Yoshino holds up surprisingly well. As I always point out when looking at any product, it all comes down to your personal use case. That will dictate what features are more important to you and could make the slight increase in cost acceptable. I'm very impressed with the build quality and performance I saw in my testing. I'm really eager to see where Yoshino goes from here. Okay, my final reminder here, I'm going to be publishing a full report on my investigation into Tech Insights report, their additional testing they did based on my conversation with them, my friend's breakdown of the battery for another point of view, all of it. So check the description for a link for that video if it's already published, or subscribe and hit the notification button so you don't miss it when it's published. I also have to thank all the folks who pointed me in the direction of Tech Insights. As rowdy as some of you guys can be in the comments. Again, please be polite and debate the ideas, not the person. I learn a lot from everybody in the comments. I'm really looking forward to sharing the follow-up. And of course, if Yoshino's solid-state claims can't be backed up, they could be pulling a fast one on all of us. I hope that's not the case, but in the meantime, I can't recommend that you get any of their products until the picture is truly clear. As much as I actually like the product that I bought for myself, if the marketing is making false claims, that kills it right there for me. But until I complete my investigation, I'm trying to keep an open mind, or should I say, remain undecided. More to come. But what do you think? What portable batteries are your favorite and why? And does seeing an actual solid-state battery like this on the market give you any hope for the future of solid-state? Jump in the comments and let me know, and be sure to developing reliable energy storage is just as, if not more important, as improving methods of obtaining energy itself. But among the slew of new batteries and energy storage systems, how can you tell which tech is worthy and which is just hype? Well, let's break down what battery tech innovations I find personally interesting, along with the scientific grounds to back my perspectives up. So right now, I'm watching a handful of technologies that run the gamut from making energy storage dramatically cheaper to super energy-dense batteries for EVs, home energy storage, and the consumer. Developing reliable energy storage is just as, if not more important, as improving methods of obtaining energy itself. But among the slew of new batteries and energy storage systems, how can you tell which tech is worthy and which is just hype? Well, let's break down what
on main tank. And if you know who this guy is, you'd initially be confused. Alarm is not known for tank play, but he was on the Rectangle Man during early Apex. His performances were hard to gauge since we don't have direct POVs of Alarm during this time. The team overall was not horrifically bad, third place in Apex Season 1, progressively getting worse until Burger King Stars disbanded in 2017. During the tail end of Alarm's career on Burger King Stars, however, when Apex Season 3 rolled around, Alarm must have had one of those quick play moments most people have had where you're playing tank, you look into a mirror, contemplate what you're doing with yourself, say fuck this, leave, and then switch to support. Sadly, he didn't have any true success throughout Apex, even after joining Lunatic High number 2, which he was playing support on. He also placed 3rd or 4th in various tournaments, but the only thing of note here was how right after Alarm switched from tank to support, his results were immediately better in totality, at least in comparison to BK Stars. But his legacy did not truly begin until Fusion University. Obviously, being Philly Fusion's contenders team, I can't believe it myself, who would have thought. Alarm primarily played Zen, which he was exceptional at. Alarm truly started coming into form when he became a support player, individually performing really well, and Fusion University was a wildly successful team all throughout contenders. In 2018, this group won contenders Season 1, 2, and 3, then went on to win 2019 contenders Season 1, and Alarm was by far the best player on this team alongside Who Are You. Alarm went from 0 to hero, winning nothing at all on tank, then switching to support, and around a year later, he was winning endlessly. This guy was one of those players where orgs were just waiting for him to turn 18. You could see the individual talent Alarm possessed by watching his POV in contenders. It was similar to a proper situation on O2 Blast, but for support. To my understanding, lots of teams wanted Alarm as a prospect. Granted, anytime someone performs this well in contenders, people would just throw money at you, but the onlookers could see his talent. Obviously, some were questioning if he was going to be overhyped, which is reasonable. Some players get hyped up like crazy, join the league, and then fail to impress. Mag in 2021 is a prime example of that. When it came to joining a team, I think in Alarm's mind, he just wanted to join the Fusion and no one else. He was on their academy team and had a fondness for Poco, which was one of Philly's off-tank players at the time. Prior to being a Fusion member, academy players wrote notes to the Tier 1 players, and this is what Alarm had to say to Poco. I'm Alarm. I don't know if I will go to Fusion or not, but if I join Fusion, I want to be closer with you. When I went to the Fusion house for dinner, I was nervous, so I didn't even say hi, and I regret it now. I want to be like you. So nowadays, I'm going to the gym with with Snillo. I want to go to the gym together with you, Snillo, and EQO. And you know what? We have the same birthday. I don't know when this letter will get to you, but I hope you make it to playoffs, and I will cheer you on. Goodbye, handsome guy. That is a very sweet note Alarm made, showing that he is a kind-hearted soul. In 2019, unfortunately for Alarm, Philly did not end up making playoffs, but their next season was looking much brighter, picking up Funny Astro, Fury, Hisu, Ivy, and of course Alarm, now that he is 18. The most eye-catching in the moment were definitely Fury and Alarm. 2-2-2 Rollock was here to stay for an entire season. People looked at Philly as a top team, and rolling out the gates, Philly was winning almost every match for the first few weeks, pushing the shit in of everybody. Those sorry bastards had no idea what was coming. Sato and Fury was a great tank line, Carpe had his MVP campaign begin in the first half of 2020, and Alarm was looking to be the best flex support in North America. Every match seemed to be a highlight reel for him, giving us a classic case of 3 DPS players on your team. He would always show up when they needed him to, landing the most clutch sleep darts to win team fights, mechanically unbelievable, and in contenders, he mostly played Zen, but in Overwatch League, when Alarm broke out the Baptiste, Ana, and even Brig, he was just better than everyone. As a rookie player, the value he was getting was generational talent levels of disgusting. It just wouldn't end. Regardless of the meta, team comp, he'd always be there to fit the bill time and time again. Statistically, Alarm was top 3 at every hero he played. People were questioning, like, is this kid actually better than Violet? And need I remind you, this was year 1 for Alarm. There were logical arguments to be made as well. Violet never played Ana. Alarm was a top 3 performance-wise at it. Violet's Brig wasn't amazing the few times he pulled it out, but Alarm, again, he was one of the best when he barely ever played it. Alarm's Baptiste and Zen were comparable to Violet as well. I know Violet had Twilight behind him to play Ana, and it's not like Violet was a slouch on her either from the glimpses that we've gotten to see, but the fact Alarm had the willingness to swap to everything and also be one of the best was a big positive in the Alarm camp. The Ana performances were not just a typical serviceable one. Think of Shu breaking out the Ana play. That's the level we're talking. And speaking of Shu, to put into perspective how good Alarm was, we all know Shu was good on Guangzhou, but it took him some time to actually get into form to what we know him as now. He joined the league in 2019 and didn't truly start making a name for himself until 2021 on Glads. When it comes to Alarm, people were watching this guy's POV arguing how he's better than Violet, who in the previous year during GOATS was incredible on Zen and won the league. That goes to show how impactful Alarm's play was on everyone. On top of this mechanical prowess and overall impact on the server, outside of the server, Alarm was always talked about highly by other members of his team, which is an important value not everyone can bring. As we all know, someone can be a good player in server, but outside they are a piece of shit. He added the intangibles anyone would want from a player while also arguably being the best support player in the world during his rookie year. He brought immense amounts of value, but sadly, not enough to win anything. Fusion was fantastic all throughout 2020's regular season, going into playoffs at number 1 seed, while getting 2 more second place finishes throughout the year. One during Summer Showdown, which is the saddest loss Philly ever took. I was honored to have this as my first ever competitive Overwatch match to witness live. Paris Eternal versus Philly Fusion. Lots of people call it the best match of all time. I think that trophy goes to June Joust Finals of 2021, but 2020 Summer Showdown is very close. Going into this tournament, this was the time Alarm was like, alright, we need to play Brig, put Funny Astro on the bench, then proceeded to be one of the best Briggs in North America when prior to Summer Showdown, he barely had any playtime, if any at all, on Brig. That is the level of talent he had when it came to playing Overwatch. Alarm could pick up
Sodium uses a much more compact format for world geometry than vanilla Minecraft, which cuts the amount of video memory used by chunks almost in half. It also eliminates calculation of geometry that isn't visible to the player. Its system for generating chunks is completely rewritten and runs much faster than the vanilla chunk generation. It also has custom threading implementation, which makes better use of multi-core CPUs, which reduces lag spikes from placing and breaking blocks. Also, animated textures that are not visible to the player are not updated, which speeds up texture processing. It also makes the lighting smoother than in vanilla Minecraft, while at the same time making it less laggy. Sodium has practically no effect on vanilla mechanics, and is allowed in Minecraft speedrunning. Entity calling. Entity calling improves performance by calculating which entities are invisible and prevents them from rendering. The performance improvements are most noticeable if you're using a highly detailed resource pack, or have a performance-heavy base with lots of machines, decorations, or mobs. It also greatly increases frame rates in lobbies of servers such as Hypixel. Lithium. Lithium is a general-purpose optimization mod for Minecraft, which works to improve a number of systems, such as game physics, mob AI, and block ticking. The mod works on both clients and servers, and can be installed on servers without requiring clients to have it as well, and doesn't change any vanilla mechanics. And because of this, it's allowed in speedrunning. Optifine. Optifine used to be the most popular Minecraft performance boosting mod. It lets you customize in-game animations and lighting to improve your gameplay on less powerful computers. It does also have some other ways of improving FPS. However, Optifine isn't open source, so the general public doesn't really know what's going on. As previously stated, Optifine used to be the most popular FPS mod for Minecraft, but in recent years it's been overtaken by Sodium. Dynamic FPS. Dynamic FPS will detect whether the Minecraft window is currently active, being hovered over, unfocused, or invisible, and for each of these states you're able to adjust the frame rate, volume, and whether text box notifications are temporarily paused. You can configure these settings for when you're AFK with a custom timeout, or while your laptop is on battery. It also has the option to have notifications enabled for whenever your battery level decreases.
People shoot when they drop down from somewhere? Okay, this is actually a very simple and effective tip, so listen up.
I'm throwing, nigga. Shut the fuck up. I'm throwing out here. Oh, it's pretty shit, nigga. Oh, she like the way that I rock. She like the way that I woo. And she makes it clap for it, nigga. And she makes it clap for it, nigga. And she makes it clap for it, nigga.
Yo, stop saying your words, yo.
Oh, my bad, my nigga, my bad. My bad, my nigga. Crip walk, nigga. And she makes it clap for it, nigga. Oh, she makes it clap for it, nigga. Machiavelli, Machiavelli. Billie Jean, Christian Dior, Dior. I'm up in all the stores. When it rains, it pours. Oh, it's raining, nigga.
This one right here, G.
When it rains, it pours. She likes the way I
Hi, I'm Terry Davis. I'm the smartest programmer that's ever lived. I was chosen by God to make his temple. I was given divine intellect, 3 gigahertz clock, and I'm getting a random word every... Start praying for the souls of the poor Linux atheist and their leader, Mr. Torvalds. You must have got it from Linus because you had to. I'm like, dude, man, let me try and explain this to you. I have a motorcycle. The CIA glow in the dark. You can see him if you're driving. You just... Okay, let me just try to explain this to you. I have a Ring 0 operating system that doesn't use virtual memory. It's written from 64-bit, doesn't use ELF, doesn't use anything to do with the tool chain. It was written from scratch, and the kernel is absolutely... I like elephants, and God likes elephants. You can go for better than realism. What do you mean better than realism? How about an elephant with blue eyes?
Call of Duty is back in the news. That's quite a lot of money. What could the last tier be? £500. £500 plus VAT. So that's £600 when you get for this one. Design your own big Easter egg, exactly how you want it within the current project. And keep in mind, guys, this is not a one-time offer. This is a monthly, reoccurring fee that you're giving this company of £500. Sorry, £500 plus VAT. So £600 a month. It's, like, the thing is, I tried to look at this and I was like, okay, that's not too bad. That's not too bad. You get early access. But like, 500 quid to put like, okay, I might do that. I might start giving them 500 quid and then just hide one of my commissions like an Easter egg. There you go. All right, that'd be worth it. Now, to the real contrarians, you might think, okay, that's a lot of money, but they are providing a lot in return. You know, you can have your own Easter egg, you can have your own credits, you can have your name wrote on the side of the battle bus in Fortnite. That's all great stuff. But looking a bit more into it, you can see that their Patreon and Twitter went completely silent on the 13th of April, and this was about a month prior, asking the Patreons to comment about DMing Green Run for access to the map. And surprise, surprise, barely anyone that paid the money was actually sent the map, and rightly so. A lot of patrons were very, very upset. And this led to such a huge backlash that someone called Destroyer Dan decided to basically get hold of the transit maps and then re-upload them onto the Steam Workshop for everyone else to play instead. Basically here, Dan is just saying that Green Run Productions is a massive scam, and that in order to even play this, you need to set your game to Dalek. Now, a lot of people actually criticize the updates for the map being so slow, but I find it really funny that someone basically yoinked it and just uploaded the entire thing themselves. But if you go into the comment section for it on the Steam community, you can see a lot of people just roasting it, being like, it took this long for this? This sucks. Now, Green, the production company, actually did mention how slow the release of the map was, and how there was, you know, a complete lack of communication, basically, despite some people possibly even paying £500 a month plus VAT. But a lot of people started to notice the similarity between the rollout of this and Danny_Zero's Waterparks map. And this is where Danny's rebrand plan started to hurt him a lot. Now, once people started to leak the maps onto the Steam Workshop for free, Danny then basically released a statement on his personal Twitter saying he is not Green Productions. He is not Green Run Productions. He has no idea who they are. I've been sent this. I find it amusing how wrong they all are on their accusations. I see their Discord messages all thinking I'm like massively affected because this is my project. It's not. I did help on the bus depot though. This doesn't affect me in any way, as I don't even take money from the project. Someone else does.